Comunque in spiaggia si stava bene oggi, eh? Però
Anyway, it
grazie
was
per
nice at the
sapere.
beach today, eh? But thanks for coming. Thank you.
Grazie. Quindi
So
dico
thank you again
grazie per
for being
essere
here
qui in
on this
questa
very hot
bellissima giornata
July
di
day.
luglio. Però
But
stiamo
we're good,
bene,
right?
no? Come
As Temperature
temperatura
Palace
Palazzo
Doglio is
dovrebbe
always,
essere.
hello
Ciao
people from
Padova.
Padova. How are you?
Bene.
Good.
Abbiamo
We have Padova,
Venezia,
Venice, Rome, and Florence.
Firenze.
Wow.
Dove?
Where? Barcelona. But I was, how long ago?
nemmeno
Not
un
even a
mese
month
fa
ago
ero
I was in
lì.
Barcelona. And you were here.
Sì,
Yes,
ho
I
partecipato a un
participated in an
evento
international
internazionale
conference
in
in
terra
Spanish land.
spagnola, interessante.
Interesting.
A breve
Soon I will
pubblicherò
publish the
le
interviews I
interviste
did
che ho
there.
realizzato lì. Allora,
So,
amici
Sardinian
sardi,
friends. So
quindi
today,
siamo
we are international
internazionali
because
perché
Sardinia
siamo
is a
un
continent.
continente,
Therefore,
quindi
the
i
continentals
continentali
today
sono
have
venuti
come
nella
to our
nostra
land.
terra. Il tema
The
che
topic I'm
affronto oggi
addressing
è un
today is an
tema
important topic
importante
that
che
concerns
riguarda
warnings
avvisi che
that through
attraverso
that
quel
phenomenon,
fenomeno
fantastic,
fantastico che
that I believe you all know about,
conoscete dei
of
cerchi
crop
di grano,
circles,
le
extraterrestrial
civiltà
civilizations,
extraterrestri ci hanno
gave us
dato l'anno
last year
scorso in virtù
by
dello
virtue of the
sviluppo
development of the
della
situation
situazione
worldwide,
mondiale che,
which, as
come
you all
molti di
see,
voi
is
vedete, è
beautiful,
bellissima,
very happy.
felicissima,
Humanity
tutta
loves each
sana,
other.
siamo
We're all
tutti
at
in
peace and
pace,
so on and so forth.
eccetera.
I'm joking,
Questa
obviously.
ovviamente è
The
la
situation
situazione
is
terribile
terrible,
e siamo
and we
dentro
are in
un
an
processo
irreversible process
irreversibile perché
because there are two
due
systems,
sistemi
existential,
esistenziali,
two
sistemi
systems
di
of power
potere che si
that are
stanno
facing each other.
scontrando. Erano
It had
molti
not
secoli
happened for
prima
many
di
centuries
accadere
because
perché
we
possiamo
can assess
guardare che il
that the
mondo
Western world,
occidentale,
especially the Anglo-Saxon one,
anglosassone, domina
dominates the
il
planet for
pianeta
about 5
da
centuries,
secoli,
more or
più o
less.
meno.
First the British
Prima gli inglesi,
Empire,
poi gli
then the
italiani,
Anglo-American
poi
Empire,
di
of which we,
a causa delle
because of our
politiche
foolishness as
politiche
Italians,
degli italiani, stiamo
are
ancora
still paying,
pagando, a parte il
apart from the karma that comes
da tutti i
from all the
danni che abbiamo
damage we have
fatto
done
come
as Roman Empire.
ma
But a few
pochi
decades
decenni
ago,
fa abbiamo
we had the
avuto la folle
crazy
idea di
idea to
seguire
follow a
un
character,
personaggio
I'm
non
not talking
affatto
about politics
discutibile,
obviously, who was called
chiamava
Benito Mussolini,
che decise
who
di
decided to
allearsi
ally
con
with
il
Mr.
signor
Adolf Hitler,
Hitler. Quindi
so we
abbiamo
lost
perso
the
la
war,
guerra e
and the
tutta la
whole
condizione
economic and
di
political
libertà
situation, let's say of national sovereignty, we lost it because we are a country defeated in war. So we make wrong choices and we are doing them again, because karma is a recursive law. Until you learn it tends to present you the same problem again. So today the Italian political scene is dominated again by that political alignment that has led us to the collapse we have been living for decades, and that we dramatically lived through during the period of the World War. So Italians are good at always choosing the losing side. Because the rising power is a global power, already much more powerful than the Westerners, it's the Eurasian Empire, formed, or let's say, led mainly by Russia, from the point of view, military, and by China from the economic point of view. And all the systems that these countries are creating are systems that simply ignore us. Because today, they have the power to ignore Washington, to ignore London, and mind their own business. That is to make and take decisions that pertain to their strategic, economic advantages and commercial ones, without being necessary anymore to talk with the West. It's no longer necessary to talk with England. It's no longer necessary to talk with Germany. It's no longer necessary to talk with the United States. Obviously, this situation is not perceived at all by the Western world because we are deceived by a belligerent faction, which is the press. So the mainstream is belligerent against the people, that is against us. And they tell us a lot of nonsense. The war in Ukraine has already been lost by NATO. They are trying to keep it alive, artificially, continuing to let thousands die and thousands of Ukrainians and also Russians, and obviously also European and NATO soldiers who are there. I've already seen documents of French, American, English soldiers who have been killed by the Russians. So already NATO is not only in the war against Russia with weapons, it is also from troopers' point of view, although not in a way official. Russia and China lead the agglomerate of BRICS, which have already surpassed as domestic product the G7. Economically, they have already surpassed us, and there is a very long queue. Now they are 10 countries, if I'm not mistaken, and there is a very long queue of other countries that want to enter this organization. These two systems, unfortunately, being led by two great nuclear powers, that is Russia and the United States, with all the retinue then of other minor powers like North Korea, like France, England, China itself, and so on, are led by two nuclear powers, which are the United States and Russia, where Russia is a tiny bit ahead, but with that number of atomic bombs, the planet can easily die dozens of times. So these two opposing systems, so powerful, are a novelty that we hadn't seen for centuries. Only centuries ago we didn't have atomic bombs. So, from the extraterrestrial world come information and very serious news about a situation that is irreversible. So I will talk to you about this. I will also talk to you about signs that come from the natural world, which is an intelligent world, at the service of certain projects that pertain to the Creator's projects, who is absolutely not a religious belief. It's a real entity, who has one peculiarity. It is omnipotent. So the Creator's projects either yes or yes, they will be realized. So the most terrible deception in which earthly humanity lives is that of having made of the most powerful entity that exists in the universe a religious belief. That is a huge deception. Because God exists. At this moment, He will be doing something. Maybe He is sitting somewhere watching the conference. So all these situations have led humanity to live a crazy life that today is drifting towards a catastrophic self-destruction. Fortunately, this discourse of power, of these two gigantic powers, human, they are facing each other, armed with atomic weapons, are accompanied by an even greater power that comes from space. So we will talk about this too. There are also people from Milan. Hello, Milan. So we will talk about this. But before entering into the heart of the exposition, I would like to remind you all a very important fact. Extraterrestrial civilizations are not here to do the little UFO show. They are here with a very precise project that has a purpose of helping earthly humanity, but with conditions. They will help only the human beings who will freely decide to embrace the cause of humanity's good. These people will be guided, will be inspired, will be protected, and if they will persevere, and they will get their hands dirty, when the irreparable will take place, and the irreparable will happen. There is an atomic exchange. It's in all the prophecies, not only in geopolitics. They will intervene and will take away, not the elect because they are good or are relatives of some politician or some big entrepreneur like Elon Musk or Bill Gates. They will take away those who have committed themselves, who have gotten their hands dirty. This is the condition. That is those who have before the irreparable happens, worked in favor of life, in whatever field it may be. Now, humanity lives a condition, especially us people, that this too had never happened before. I'm talking especially about the golden billion, that is us Westerners. Today, the Western people have the same desires as the rich. We try to emulate the rich. Above all, this has been amplified in an abnormal way by social media. So I see girls who pose, make all those poses, put the photos on Instagram, put them on Facebook, put them everywhere. They exchange them and so on and so forth. And in young people, and also in the less young, there is the desire to have wealth, possession, sex, career, fame, and so on and so forth. Now, in a condition where the dominated people have the same desires as the rich, it creates a gigantic problem. It's not possible a revolution which changes the state of things that is leading us to self-destruction. Among other things, let's remove the nuclear military system. We are destroying the planet simply by producing consumer goods. We know about the gigantic islands of plastic that are in the oceans, Atlantic and Pacific. We know the terrible condition of the ozone layer. We know the pollution of foods. Now, first chemtrails didn't exist, then they invented a politically correct name, geoengineering, and it became normal. There was someone who said, first they ignore you, then they make fun of you, then they attack you, then finally they will say the same things you say. So today about geoengineering, they talk about it freely everywhere. But geoengineering means spreading in the skies, above our heads, a whole series of substances that are toxic, barium, aluminum, and so on and so forth. So in a situation like this, regardless of a possible nuclear clash, our destiny is sealed, because all this stuff comes down, it's also magnetic. We drink it, we breathe it. In fact, today, diseases, taken away then, the, let's say, magic serums and so on and so forth. Diseases are, despite the progress of medical science, are continuously increasing. When I was a child in Baratili San Pietro, tumors were almost unheard of. Indeed, even in families, it was perceived as a shame. Do you remember? Oh my goodness, I have cancer. Today instead, it is pandemic. So let's remove the military or geopolitical problem. We have another very serious problem. And it's even more serious that there is no trend reversal. Everything is getting worse, faster and faster. Why? Because we all think the same way. So the extraterrestrials, what do these civilizations that have overcome for millennia or millions of years these problems, they bring us a new vision of life, without which no revolution is possible. All revolutions, regardless that then, they changed everything to change nothing, but started from a new idea. The French Revolution, communism, the American Revolution, and so on and so forth. Today there is no new vision of life. We are always stirring the same soup, right, left, center, which don't exist anymore because they are all sold to the power of money, all of them. And so what do? Here these beings bring us a new vision of life, new concepts, new scientific knowledge, in which the most powerful and striking scientific knowledge is the science of spirit. Therefore, the abolition of religious beliefs, minus based on nothing. Actually, no, they are based on the manipulation of sacred scriptures. Not that the sacred scriptures are manipulated, Gospels or the Bible. It's the teaching that is manipulated. How they explain it to us, how they tell it to us, how they present Jesus Christ to us, how they present the apostles to us, how they present us Jesus' teaching. It's all manipulated. That is a thing that taken away, That charisma of power that they have is almost ridiculous. The mystery of faith is a contradiction compared to what the Scripture says. Thank you, Father, for having explained the truth to the pure and simple ones and hidden it from the learned and wise. So the learned and the wise ones, who are the scribes and Pharisees who wanted Christ's death, claim to explain a Scripture with so-called theology, which not only doesn't explain, it confuses. And when it's so confused that it doesn't explain anything anymore, they invented the mystery of faith. Mystery of faith. But excuse me, weren't the pure and simple ones supposed to understand? But we, not knowing the Scriptures, easily fall also due to a legacy of tradition, easily fall into the trap. All this talk to say what? That the most precious value, beyond what has been and will be the help, that they will give, strategically speaking, the extraterrestrials. But the most important thing is that it's not possible to form a new humanity, if not by studying the teachings and knowledge that these beings bring us. Therefore, very important, to study, as in all things, ora et labora. If we don't study, that is, if we don't acquire new knowledge, we cannot have a new vision of life, death, karma. For example, the gospel is centered on the law of karma and reincarnation. Reincarnation is not a religious theme, it's a scientific theme. If I am a spirit in a body, it's science that must study this, not a priest. What does a priest understand about science? Because there is something scientific, an energy that unites me, spirit, to this body that I'm temporarily using. My previous life was revealed to me, and I found the proofs of this information. I wasn't Sardinian. I wasn't even Italian. There they killed me. I'm born again here. Eh? No. No, I was in Europe. So, the questions. I'll allow one, otherwise if we start then we won't be able to finish. Yes, but give a microphone. What's your name? Samuele. All right, friends. There will be time for questions later. Maybe take notes on your phone. Jesus' cousin is very helpful, obviously.
Hello, thank you for letting me ask the question. It's your first conference.
Yes, go ahead, Samuele.
Maybe this question helps me understand the topic better.
Yes?
That certainly fascinates me. You talked about mystery of faith, but also probably believing unconditionally in the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations is a form of faith that has its mystery.
But this I leave to the stupid ones. I am a researcher. I believe over 10 years with Rai. My job is to document. Therefore, I have abolished the creed. If I bring you my dictionary, the page where it was written to believe, I tore it out.
Okay.
We must know Samuele.
Yes.
And look for proofs. So believe, for God's sake. Look.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes. We believe in politicians, and they stick it to us where the sun usually doesn't shine. We believe in the clergy, and they are all corrupt and full of money up to their ears. Which, for heaven's sake, if someone has worked honestly, I am not prudish. It's right that he should have. But there the problem is that we have data of a certain type, that is judicial, which demonstrate that in that environment there is a lot of corruption and a lot of embezzlement, up to abuse on children. So don't believe. No. Understand. Fantastic. You are the right person. Thank you, Samuele. So study. So I provide free resources that you can study. First, there's my website, www.piergiorgiocaria.it, where you find many articles. And there's the section Free Resources. There's the Free Resources section where, by clicking on it, you can download about 20 books in electronic format that were the basis on which I formed myself. At the beginning, when I met the one who has been my master, my mentor. We are preparing the audiobooks. So, soon, we will solve this situation. So these 20 books were the formative basis, recommended, initially, by the one who has been my mentor, my spiritual father, let's use this term. Even if it's a bit, let's say, not entirely correct, where there are his messages, and then other texts that I added to, let's say, embrace the various aspects of this very complex theme that embraces science, society, and the invisible world. That is that realm that then is explained by the so-called science of spirit. Extraterrestrial civilizations explain when in a society imbalance is created between material sciences and spiritual sciences, there is self-destruction, imbalance, excess of religious science, let's call it that, dictatorship, inquisition, persecutions, killings, religious wars, and so on. When there is imbalance of material science, destruction of the environment, wars, and so on, the two sciences must be in balance because it's the world of spiritual sciences that determines the world, physical and of physical laws. So if humanity understood the ineluctability of reward or punishment through the law of cause and effect, rest assured that Mr. Netanyahu wouldn't do those horrible things he is doing, or Putin, or Zelensky, or whoever you want, because these gentlemen are digging their grave, a terrible grave of suffering with their own hands, and the punishment is certain, just as the law of gravity is certain. So not knowing these laws is a tragedy for living beings, because we are the creators of our reality, cause, effect. So today we are collecting the effects of past causes, starting from 5 seconds ago and going back to past lives. There are people who in this incarnation are paying off karmas matured 12,500 years ago in Atlantean society. So violating these laws afterwards determines very long periods of suffering. So earthly humanity is in this devastating condition because in its life choices it doesn't consider these laws. So it's fundamental to know them. Knowing these laws, we become the good pilots of our life, and we can program knowingly our happiness, our health, our abundance. And this in Scripture is foreseen, because Christ says, "Follow me." That is, practice the laws that I teach, and you will have 100 times as much. In the 100 times as much, Christ contemplates also matter. That is, material things, goods. In fact, the extraterrestrial societies that practice and live according to the laws of this science are not wealthy, but more. That is, they have a life of luxury and wealth that we cannot even dream of. Traveling in the cosmos, spacecraft for everyone, houses, demotic. That Bill Gates' one makes you laugh. We waste a frightening amount of resources in wars. If we remove those who parasitize human society, the military, the clergy, politics, war industries, armies, can you imagine how much good we recover for society? That is, there's an elite which to defend her privileges wastes frightening riches. I'm not talking about money. Money is created from nothing. I'm talking about real goods. Think how many are the military? NATO. Actually, no. The Pentagon is the most polluting organization on the whole planet. They have more than 800 bases around the world. And what do they produce? Nothing. They consume and destroy, consume and destroy. So this frightening panorama, if we changed it, we would all be well. Up to the last Aborigine who lives in the forest Australian or the indigenous of the Amazon forest. So it's a situation of this world that to define demented is still too little. And it's frightening because we are risking the annihilation of the entire humanity and of the entire ecosystem of the planet. Something must be done. But it's difficult because we don't have a new vision of life. So we must study. If you have problems with internet, you can also write to this email, info@piergiorgiocaria.it. Don't put anything else. Just ask for the books, because you will receive an automatic response that will connect you, and you can download this material. Then, since anyway there are those who want to touch with hand, these books we have printed them also in paper format, also because it's free energy. They never run out of battery. Just a candle and they work. Eh? The cost merely of printing. That is, if you go with electronic formats to copy shop, you spend more. It's a service that we offer. Well, they are for payment. In this world, if you don't have money, you do nothing. No? Who works for free? Raise your hand. That is, human society works this way. If I don't use money, no way I take the plane and come to Cagliari. If I don't use money, I don't have the computer. I come here with ostrich feathers. That is money, madam. Must be used. We must use money to eliminate money. The problem is not money because this is another trap. Hey, but you carry a do business. But what should I do? You have no idea. You have no idea how much I spend to do the work. A ton of money, equipment, travels. Agencies that help me make websites. I don't know how to make websites. I spend much more to do what I do than what I spend for myself. And I assure you, much, much more. And I challenge anyone to do the same, because any beneficial work costs. If I want to help children in Africa or anywhere, I must use money. What do I use? I can't send them bananas from Italy. So it's entrepreneurship. The problem is not using money, it's how you use it, what you do with it. If I make all these speeches, then I arrive in Ferrari. I have the villa in Monte Carlo, the villa here, and so on and so forth. Well, then I agree with you. But we must use money to do something. Otherwise, we go live, I don't know, in the forest. We live on hunting and fishing like the ancients thousands of years ago, but we stay there. But if I have to speak to humanity, which is what the extraterrestrials asked me to do, because what I do is what they want, they asked me for it, I must use the system that rules on this world. We must use the demonic system that rules in this world to destroy it. Christ says it, madam. He is my reference. Make friends with unjust riches. And when Christ talks about friends, he is talking about himself, of his angels, and of those who are above us, who don't use money anymore. Because our riches, even if they were 5 cents, are unjust. Because they are based on the iniquitous exploitation of peoples and of planets' resources. So they are all unjust riches that drip blood. Italy is sending weapons to Ukraine and Israel. So our riches are unjust. And if we don't use them also to do good and to change the system, we will be asked to account for them. How did you use your riches? Like this, Lord, that he will ask us. Whoever would subsequently like to order them in paper format can write to this email info@cosmicshop.it. Tips for using these texts. Since the brain is like a stomach that learns in life to digest information, knowledge, it's a struggle that we all know when we go to school. Knowledge makes the brain automatically create synapses and neural networks. But when it's a new knowledge, we know the struggle of learning. And this new science is very complex, not only because it's complex in itself, but because it breaks down all the old paradigms that we've been taught by all institutions, including scientific ones, at least in the general view. And so, my advice is don't stop at a line or page you don't understand. Let the brain work on its own, automatically, so read it loosely, everything, and then start again. By the fifth, sixth time, you'll see that you'll understand almost everything, because the brain will create synapses. Will record because neurons record on holographic disks, which become the automatic action. When we go to driving school at first, it's a right mess. Pedal, brake, clutch, lever, a right mess. Parking. And you bang here and bang there, it's too far out, it's too far in. I climb on the sidewalk, run over the traffic warden, a complete mess. When the brain has memorized everything you need to do, you can drive from Palermo to Milan, chat with whoever's next to you, and you arrive because the brain automatically sees the sign, sees the stop sign, the traffic light, hears the engine, and makes you work because the brain is programmed to leave you space to store new knowledge constantly. We know that we use a tiny part of the brain, 4%, 3%, so to reach 100%, it takes quite a lot, so that's how it's done. You read loosely. Even learning a language, you watch TV series with subtitles not in Italian but in English. And little by little the brain connects. In the end, you can speak the new language. So let's use this fantastic capacity of our brain to learn a new science. That is, move from nonsense to science. Then there's my YouTube channel. Subscribe. Recently I've exceeded 100,000 subscribers. They've started to persecute me. They delete my videos, they've removed monetization, however, I thank this. There's someone, I believe, who reports me. And by now I've made my appeals, but the algorithms, I send the request for review. 1 second, and I get the response. We have reviewed. It's not possible. You're fucking with me, as they say, in Rome. So I'm on the blacklist by now. My brother called me the other day. He told me, look, there's a gentleman from Colombia who wants to meet you. He has lived many years in Miami. And since I've started publishing in Spanish and English, especially the most important topics that I deal with, so that this knowledge spreads in the world, and I assure you that there isn't anyone who knows it. And I tell you this as an international researcher who travels the planet for about 30 years. And in the end, he told my brother, look, I won't take him to America because I've listened to a conference he recently published in English. He said they'll make him disappear immediately. So he offered me to go to Colombia. We'll see now. Another a pool of information, Giorgio Bongiovanni's website, contactee and stigmatized, where he publishes information and especially the messages that he receives from the cosmic and divine world, along with his YouTube channel, where you can find other material for study. To stay in touch with the things I do, there's the events section, events of my website, or you can write to my secretariat, segreteria@piergiorgiocaria.it. Then there's my Facebook page, Then there's Instagram. Then there's the Telegram channel. Then there's the newsletter. You'll find the form in scrolling through the website page or by writing to Segreteria at piergiorgiocaria.it. One of the ways I have to finance the work are courses where I delve into, in a way impossible to do in a conference, the main themes that I deal with. And we are creating an online portal. And to access the videos that we have already uploaded, on the homepage, on the left, there's video available. We're clicking. Then you'll find the various parts of these courses. The longest and most substantial is the one about karma and reincarnation, where there's all the, let's say, old school, known for thousands of years up to now, and there's all the grandiose new information that the extraterrestrials have brought us. Then you'll find some history, you'll find particular cases of important incarnations that have determined certain turns in the history of Earth's humanity, or even recent events like this, where I explain what was really the introduction of the Green Pass. It was a ritual, Luciferian, of sacrifice of the Italian people. I explain all aspects. In this seminar, the gate of hell and the dark secrets of the elite, symbolisms and occult meanings about the diabolical plans for world domination. While instead in this other webinar, I explain the spiritual prophetic part of the clash between East and West that's happening now, because Mr. Putin is predicted, in the prophecies, he's part of them, besides the situation that has been created. Other themes, obviously, contact stories couldn't be missing. The friendship case was a grandiose case that I investigated. I also made a documentary for RAI that went around the world, then it was broadcast on many TVs too. It's 9 parts. It's the most complete and deep study of the friendship case, because then I link it to what happened in that period. Another theme, extraordinary, the hollow earth, the secrets of hollow earth, where I talk about this scientific truth that to this day, despite being discovered in 1936, is concealed from planet Earth because the Earth is internally inhabited by a superior civilization, and it's hidden. The Americans tried to invade it with the high jump operation, which was commanded by Rear Admiral Byrd. Aircraft carrier, seaplanes, submarines, 5,000 military personnel. They presented it as a scientific mission, but you don't send an aircraft carrier with warplanes to do a scientific mission. And however, since they are much more evolved civilizations, the mission, I believe, was supposed to last 6 months. After a few weeks, Lassie come home. There was a great international intrigue that involved the Nazis and the Soviets, which I talked about in the last seminar. Nazis and Soviets at the conquest of Hollow Earth, but there are already several episodes. Sacred geometry. This is part of the cycle of karma and reincarnation, the immortal prince, and the mysteries of Muzine. Extraordinary truths in the time of the Great Revelation. Ufology. You know that the Pentagon has started to... has started, by now it's a certain fact. The American government admits officially, even through federal laws, then I'll talk about it a bit, that the extraterrestrial crafts and extraterrestrials are on Earth. They call them non-human intelligences. Why do they do this? Because extraterrestrial, UFO, now they call them UAP, are linked to a whole chain of thought. So if I hear UFO or extraterrestrial, a whole series of automatic connections starts for that discourse of synapses that I was telling you about before. So they invent a new name because they want to create it themselves. The association of concepts. They want to create it themselves. So the word UAP, the word intelligence non-human, is linked to the concept of threat, to national security, that is, they are a threat. So we, who have been formed with the word UFO or extraterrestrial, won't change. But they're aiming at the new generations. Gradually they'll get them used to it. They'll format their brain. In that way I explain to you, so tomorrow, in 20-30 years, all humanity, assuming and not granted that we'll still be here, will think of extraterrestrials as a threat. In reality they are the biggest threat to the system. They said it themselves. The World Economic Forum said it. Of that shrinking violet that is Klaus Schwab. The Financial Times said it in 2021. The extraterrestrial presence is the biggest threat to the system for one reason only. It's a power they can do nothing about. It's not controllable. It's the X factor that you never know. That if tomorrow they decide to land everywhere, no one can stop them. Another matter, now it's being talked about again because that film came out. Fly Me to the Moon with Scarlett Johansson. The Mystery of the Moon. We went to the moon. We didn't go there anymore because we did so many crazy things on the moon. They wanted the Americans, even to explode a plutonium atomic bomb. And since it's full of extraterrestrial bases in the end, they said, we've understood, stay home. We won't let you come anymore. Now, since the system fears the extraterrestrial truth, they themselves have put out false photos, all those things that they talk about, the various of counter-information, who don't consider the extraterrestrial discourse. To do what? Mislead. Strategy of distraction. I throw the poisoned meatball. They'll fight among themselves. We went there. No, we didn't go. No, but the photo is fake. No, but the photo is real. And no one asks themselves the question, if we went there, why don't we go anymore? We don't go anymore because the extraterrestrials told us, enough. Think that the Apollo missions were planned up to Apollo 20, and new investments were already planned for the subsequent ones. Because there was a military project in the early 60s called Project Horizon, to establish on the moon a permanent military base with atomic weapons for America, to threaten planet Earth. So for American dominance, with nuclear weapons. They didn't let them do it, obviously. So I talk about these things in this series of seminars, about the moon, top secret moon, and NASA's manipulations about the reality of our satellite. They've even removed the moon's color. They've made it gray. The moon is colorful because the minerals, the metals, that are on the moon are the same as Earth's, apart from an element called regolith, which here I don't know if there is any. But on the moon there's loads of it. But then the moon is colorful, brown, light blue, green, blue. There is everything. Search on Google Images, moon true colors, you'll be gobsmacked. But since it's full of extraterrestrial installations, that is domes that protect from meteorites and from cosmic rays their cities or their bases, and these are colorful, they are white, light blue, electric blue. They say, how do we explain these colors to people? We remove the color. We make up that the moon is gray and thus format the brain. TV series, NASA photos without color, and thus none of us having ever seen the gray moon because the moon in the sky is yellow, will all think of the gray moon, and it's not gray. Hidden truths about the moon conquest, alien bases on the moon, evidence of extraterrestrial presence on our satellite. I invite you to watch this conference of 4 hours, I believe. You'll find it on my YouTube channel, The Conquest of the Moon and Extraterrestrial Involvement, a skillfully manipulated reality, where I explain and show the extraterrestrial messages regarding lunar missions, where extraterrestrials warned, don't do what you're planning to do, but they told them beforehand, then they did it anyway. In the end, they said, if you continue like this, we'll be forced to stop you coming here. Which then is important. I used to work with TV stations. My documentaries were paid tens of thousands of euros by RAI. The extraterrestrials at a certain point asked me to get out, leave that world. Why? Because they censor you. Well, yes, it's true. In my documentaries that I delivered to Jacobo, I certainly couldn't talk about certain things, which wasn't their censorship. I knew it. It was a self-censorship. I knew what I could and couldn't say. So they asked me to get out of it and speak directly to the people and tell them the whole truth. All right, and how do I make a living? Your problem. Do it yourself. Ah, thanks. Samuele, if we start, I repeat, let me do the presentation, then there will be questions. I had a contact that I requested at Su Pelosu in 1990 because my mentor told me that these beings by their laws cannot speak directly to humanity. They cannot impose their superiority. Scientific, technological, they seek human collaborators to bring to their fellow humans, also because it's more spontaneous to respond to another terrestrial, to bring to their fellow humans their knowledge and the evidence of their presence. So I requested a contact in quite a playful way anyway. I mean, honestly, I didn't believe it would happen. Instead, it did happen. A wonderful spacecraft came. I was in company, so there is a witness. And they communicated with me. And from there, then, a whole process began. I'm not a contactee. A process began where, in various forms, they make me get the information, directly or indirectly. But it's not like I'm Adamski who goes there. The flying saucer lands, Horton comes out, good evening, listen, do this. It happens in forms. Moreover, today it's very dangerous because the military have developed a whole series of radars that are able to intercept UFOs even when they're invisible. And they attack them. They attack them. Fighters immediately take off to attack them. Not that it does anything to them, but it's a problem. And so, from, let's say, around the 70s, 80s onwards, they use other systems. It's a very complicated concept. They're called thought images. Then maybe later, if you want, I'll explain it. So let's come to today's topic, the six-pointed star and Christ's monogram. So one of Christianity's most ancient symbols is this one. It's called Christ's monogram. But the origin, I mean actually, being the root of creation always the same, even if then we develop religions, different names, but the creator is always the same. Then whether you call him Giovanni, whether you call him Alberto, whether you call him Antonio, it's always him. Also because God speaks to various cultures and to various races in the most suitable forms. Also conceptually, so we have the gigantic pantheon of the Hindu world, or we have instead religions like ours, where there's only one God. We don't have a pantheon of gods, even if then in the scriptures various divinities are spoken of. However, on average, the average believer doesn't study the scriptures, doesn't know them. That is, we practice a religion by hearsay. So Christianity has borrowed and made its own, perhaps adding modifications, symbolisms that already existed. Therefore, Christ's monogram existed already before as a symbol, referring to a pre-Christian deity, and represented the solar wheel with 6 or 8 rays. Here we have a Christ monogram with 6 rays, where there's the Alpha and Omega, the initial of Christos, the first letter in Greek and the last. And it was and originates from a solar god of Celtic religion, which is the god Tyrannus. If I'm not mistaken, Lamborghini even made a car, the Tyrannus. And it was the wheel god that we see in this statuette, who was also identified as sky sun god or thunder god, whose name indeed was Tyrannus, especially the ancient Gauls, so the Celtic peoples, who settled in the territories of current France, but then they came up to northern Italy, and even further, the sign is an attribute of Tyrannus, that is the wheel. You see? And in this case, the statuette has a wheel with 6 rays because the wheel was the sun's chariot. That is, the sun moves in the sky. So for the ancients, it was transported by a chariot, then in Roman and Greek religion, actually first Greek then Roman, the god Apollo, the solar chariot, and so on. So the wheel with 6 or 8 rays not only indicates divinity, but also indicates the sun. And in Christianity, we have it. For example, St. Peter's Square. There's a gigantic solar wheel with 8 rays that we don't see because usually we're on the ground. But with an aerial photo, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rays. So this symbology is present, but then it's not known, on average, by the faithful, but there are very many. For example, the trigram Jesus Homini Salvator, JHS, that we find in various symbologies even inside the host. In St. Bernardine's trigram, it's inside a sun with 12 rays. So it's a symbology that is present but comes from before Christianity existed. So the sun, not only as physical, scientific, astronomical center that sustains life, but also the center, the logos of Christ. Therefore, Jesus Homini Salvator, because Christ is a solar God, indeed Christ is the sun. That is, Christ is the spirit of the sun. And in the sun live the 3 divine hierarchies, the cherubim, seraphim, and thrones live in the sun. Where do angels live? On clouds, we've seen that's not true. Also because with the invention of aviation, we would have wiped them all out. And so they must be somewhere. On average, well, it's in the spiritual world. Yes, all right, but what is the spiritual world? Where is it? In space? Where is it? The spiritual world, mainly, is in the sun, in suns. So every sun has a god, a supreme being, a king or an emperor, a monarch. And in our sun, there's the Father and the Son. So there's Adonai, which is the name of Christ's Father, and there's Christ, who then takes flesh and blood when the Baptist baptizes Jesus. And at that moment, the solar logos enters Jesus' body, and that famous voice is heard saying, "Behold my beloved Son, in him I am well pleased." Because at that moment, the solar logos enters into Jesus. So who did those 3 years of mission was Jesus Christified. Jesus Christ, they were 2. Indeed, there's a seemingly contradictory passage in the Gospel where he says, "I will not return anymore, but I will remain with you until the end of days." And that is Christ. Then Jesus says, "I will not leave you orphans. I will return among you." Because who returns as judge of humanity is Jesus Christified. So therefore, the crop circle messages, which is a form of symbolic communication that extraterrestrials have chosen to bypass the very strong censorship of the powers that want to prevent humanity from being aware of this presence, and especially of their messages, of their concepts that are totally in opposition to the values of the system which dominates planet Earth, both the old one, dying, the Anglo-American one we're part of, and the new one. That is the Russian Chinese. Let's say Oriental. They are antithetical to both powers. Indeed, they have often said, "We are neither with the East nor with the West," because they are both criminal. That is, they are 2 unjust power systems based on weapons, on monetary speculation, and so on. And last season, the crop circles were like never before monothematic. Usually they touch various topics for each season. Last year it was all focused on the sun, and there occurred a fact that I had never found, because I've been studying these figures for very many years. I've been to England various times also, which is the most important center. Even the fakes that were made, curiously, had the sun as theme. So, it's as if an energy had inspired the forgers anyway to stay in that thematic stream, so all about the sun. All solar symbolisms, and the explanation of each figure. So far I've done half, the other half I'll do. After summer, including the new ones, very few. This year is a very anomalous season, really few are appearing. And moreover, they started very late usually. April, early May they started, this year, in late June. And you'll find the symbologies explained in this seminar, Signs and Messages from Heaven to Earth. No. The fantastic crop circles of 2023, Signs and Messages from Heaven to Earth. Why the sun? So they refer to the physical sun, but that has behind it, as generating, caused the Christic sun, that is Christ's will, to speak to humanity also through nature. And it's a fact that we find in history, also a way to indicate to Earth's humanity that from the sun a very powerful activity is starting that will have an enormous influence on planet Earth, both from a merely physical planetary viewpoint and from a geopolitical viewpoint, therefore also social, and from a spiritual viewpoint, that is the sun, which is the center of physical, psychic emanation, therefore soul-related and spiritual, begins an activity that, in the coming years, but already now is implementing, will push energy to completely change the face of planet Earth and humanity itself. This discourse began already at the end of last year. The eruption of a large filament produces a partial halo of CME, coronal mass ejections, therefore coronal mass ejection. The impact on Earth is expected for November 5th, news dated 4th November. Solar flares that had already started from October 31st. We have here some photos of gigantic solar eruptions. You see October 31st, November 2nd, November 3rd. So a paroxysmal activity of our sun. And let's see it in video too. And they are very powerful energies. So these energies then hit us in a very powerful way, determining afterwards physical effects at all levels, soul effects, and spiritual effects. Not only there were solar explosions that were shooting this energy, impressive, there was the coincidence, in the case of these explosions, of a gigantic coronal hole or coronal gap facing Earth. So the simultaneity of these explosions and of particle flows, minus generated by coronal holes, generated extraordinary effects on our planet. Indeed, the graphs, here, this is an expert, Tamitha Skov, direct hit at long last. A solar storm launches while in the Earth strike zone today. NASA prediction shows impact by midday on November 5th. This storm will be sandwiched before and fast solar wind after, making auroras possible to mid-latitudes until November 10th. And there was truly a phantasmagoric display of auroras down to absolutely anomalous latitudes, as hadn't happened for many years. Red northern lights, sightings in the Dolomites, throughout northern Italy, the images. Exactly as the expert had predicted, on the evening of November 5th, the northern lights were spotted with the naked eye. not only northern Italy, but it reached as far as Veneto and Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy, Piedmont, and also locations in central Italy, up to the Marche region, which is the region where I, when I'm in Italy, reside. So, Central South, Veneto, Trentino Alto Adige, Romagna, Lombardy, Piedmont, Marche, even as far as Abruzzo and Puglia, and also near the coasts. It was then seen in Romania, Austria, England, Russia, Turkey, Greece, and Australia, where they are called Southern Lights, so northern to the north of the equator, southern to the south. Here they are. I don't know if it's possible to turn off this row of lights. Okay, thank you very much. This one in Turkey, November 5th. Australia, November 5th. Norway, fantastic. Being much further north, it's more colorful. Hungary, Austria, Ireland, Wales, Switzerland. Look, the colors are incredible. Piedmont, Rovigo and Veneto. Valoria, still Veneto. Truly a blood-red sky as very rarely was seen. Porto Garibaldi in Emilia. Gabice Mare in the Marche. A truly anomalous and spectacular event. This event then repeats again, shortly after, in May. So new, very powerful solar flares. Again, northern lights visible throughout Italy. So not only these auroras, generated by solar explosions from solar activity, are rare at such low latitudes, but even very close together. Very close together, and so again auroras in absolutely anomalous places. May 10th, Canada, New Zealand, California, Uruguay even, so Latin America, Ireland, spectacular, truly. Ireland, Valle d'Aosta, Italy, the snow completely fuchsia, Cerveteri, Italy, Civita di Bagno, L'Aquila, Italy, Emilia-Romagna, Italy, Porto San Giorgio, which is just a stone's throw from where I am, province of Fermo, Italy. So, this discourse obviously has its scientific explanation, but these phenomena are linked to a very important prophecy that Our Lady gave at Fatima. And I believe also in relation to crop circle messages, especially, and to extraterrestrial messages, proper written ones, that this activity of nature itself is an important message that underlines the geopolitical condition minus of terrestrial society. So, according to astronomical science, northern or southern lights are caused by the interaction of charged particles of protons and electrons. You see that they interact with Earth's magnetic field with the ionosphere. But let's ask ourselves a question. Why 2 northern lights visible in Italy in less than 2 months, despite being very rare in our country? The cause, scientists say, is that the Sun is approaching its phase of maximum magnetic activity, compared to the normal cycle of 11 years. So it's particularly active at the level of flares, and therefore coronal mass ejections are more frequent, like those that caused the auroras of September 25th and November 5th, and also those of May that were seen in the skies down to the lowest latitudes. But every 11 years, the Sun does these activities, and activities of this type and phenomena of this type hadn't been seen for many, many years, and we'll see since when. So that's the scientific explanation, but there's a spiritual explanation. The science of spirit through the messages of those who live in the sun, the so-called solar geniuses, or Elohim according to biblical Hebrew terminology. There isn't only the physical sun, but also the spiritual Christic sun. This is the trigram Jesus Hominum Salvator of Saint Bernardine, where it's clearly a sun with 12 rays, so Christ is in the sun. Indeed, the extraterrestrials say, if you want to see God physically, it's a gigantic flaming sphere in the sky. That is God, who became flesh and blood in Jesus, who then becomes Jesus Christ. In these two aspects, the sun, therefore, that is the physical and especially the spiritual one, which is then the cause of these events, is signaling to us and generating situations that we as humanity will go to live. And spiritual science also tells us that nature itself is one of the instruments that God uses to give signs and warnings to humanity. So let's go to similar past events that are, as I already told you, related to the prophecy of Fatima, and based on what happened in 2023, but continues to happen, because solar activity hasn't stopped, but continues to increase and is very strong in these days. So these phenomena are indicative of similar prophetic developments as already happened with Fatima. Indeed, it was a natural sign that the seer of Fatima, who survived Jacinta and Francisco, that is Lucia dos Santos, indicated as an announcement, a natural sign as announcement of a great punishment, which was the terrible Second World War. The natural sign manifested itself in some exceptional northern lights that illuminated Europe's skies, minus before the conflict. The message in which this sign had been announced by Our Lady, this sign, was given to the seers in the series of Fatima apparitions, exactly the apparition of July 13, 1917. Among other things then, on October 13th, there was precisely the miracle, so-called, of the sun. So it was a miracle, let's say a phenomenon, miraculous, according to our understanding. That was seen by over 70,000 people. It was called the miracle of the sun. Moreover, in the 90s, I went to southern Italy. We had heard the news of a seer who had apparitions, very young. Her name was Deborah. And on that occasion, I and other people could see with our own eyes the miracle of the sun. That is it manifested. There's this rotation with colors, like rainbow, during the day. It was around 4, 5 in the afternoon. And the message is this: July 13th, 1917, when you see a night illuminated by an unknown light, you know that it is the great sign that God gives you, that He is about to punish the world for its crimes, by means of war, of famine, and persecutions against the Church and the Holy Father. To prevent it, Our Lady says to the seers, I will come and ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart. So already from 1917, and the Bolshevik Revolution was just beginning, Rasputin had been killed. In 1916, who was trying to convince Tsar Nicholas II to exit the Triple Alliance, but the English order a plot using some corrupted nobles of the Tsar's court, and Rasputin was killed because he was convincing the Tsar not to enter World War I, which the English, among other things, they've even made a film about it quite recently. Where are the English who kill Rasputin, who is presented as a depraved degenerate and so on? It was there too the mud machine, which was used also for Alessandro Count of Cagliostro and other characters inconvenient to Vatican power. So, already then, Our Lady saw into the future and indicated Russia as an important center of world events. It has been so both with the birth of communism and it is now with what is happening. Therefore, the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart, and communion on first Saturdays. If Vatican religious hierarchies will heed her requests, Russia will convert, and there will be peace. If not, it will spread its errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions against the Church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Several nations will be annihilated, but in the end my Immaculate Heart will triumph. This was true with communist Russia that gave rise to the Soviet Union. And it is now, where the first country being annihilated is Ukraine, which I doubt will ever manage to rise again from the frightful catastrophe into which it has fallen because of the West's deceptions. Ukraine is a failed state that is being artificially kept alive because the money for the whole state machine is what the Americans, Italians, and all Europeans give it. But Ukraine is finished. Apart from that, I believe more than 500,000 human beings have died. And they continue to die. I don't know if you've seen the images. There are recruiters who kidnap people on the street to send them to the front. Now Ukrainians are starting to rebel and set fire to recruiters' cars. But obviously they're scared because they are Nazis. So, the punishment would come according to the words of human beings, of Our Lady, if human beings didn't repent. Repenting doesn't mean becoming religious. Also because Our Lady speaks to Catholics, it means review your lifestyle. If the lifestyle is corrupt, materialistic, social divisions arise, and then wars. And so, Our Lady asks for a change in humans' way of living. And if the Vatican hadn't, in the person of the Pope, consecrated Russia to her Immaculate Heart, these things would happen, which they didn't do. Pope Francis did it, I believe last year or the year before. Yes, 2022. But it's too late. This is a prophecy that Jesus made to the same seer. Now, I'll present it to you. So I will return, Our Lady says in that message of July 17, to ask for the consecration of Russia, and she does it in an apparition to Lucia dos Santos on July 13, 1929. While Lucia was doing her novitiate in the Order of Dorothean Sisters at Tui in Spain, Our Lady appeared to her and kept her promise of July 13, 1917. I will return to ask for Russia's consecration. That day Our Lady said to Lucia dos Santos, the moment has come when God asks that the Holy Father make, in union with all the bishops of the world, the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, promising in this way to save it. There are so many souls that God's justice condemns for sins committed against me. The sins, then, are violations of the 10 Commandments. Do not kill, do not bear false witness, do not commit adultery. In short, all that is the common life of terrestrials. But I mean we daily violate at least 2 or 3 of them. If then we're good, all of them. And there are many people who do it, that is, who kill every day. I have a very dear friend who has been in the upper echelons of Cosa Nostra, who killed with his own hands many people. He repented, he reformed, that is to say, he changed his lifestyle. He collaborated with justice. He got loads of mafiosi put in jail. He was a friend of Falcone and Borsellino, and he changed his life. And if you change your life, God forgives you even if you're someone who killed. Because the purpose of the law isn't punishment, revenge. The purpose of the law is to educate you. Once you have understood, all right, that is, you are forgiven. Obviously, you must repay the evil done. So, this gentleman who is called Gaspare Mutolo, I can say it because by now he's a public figure. He had billions. I believe he bought a Ferrari every month. And he was the director of drug trafficking for Cosa Nostra in the 80s. It was him. who acted as bridge with South American cartels. He was very wealthy. Now he lives on a pension. He gave everything, all the money. He named names. He did his jail time. Now he's a free man. He is paid by changing his life, giving back to the state all ill-gotten gains. I don't know if he did well, because the state then, not the state which doesn't exist, the men of state. Because institutions don't exist. Mrs. Church doesn't exist. Mr. State doesn't exist. Mrs. Bank isn't there. There exist human beings who form institutions. So institutions are honest or corrupt if they are honest or corrupt the human beings inside institutions. Right, lawyer? Am I saying right? Thanks. So, repenting means this. And therefore I come to ask reparation. Sacrifice yourself with this intention and pray. Unfortunately, the Vatican, for political conveniences, denies obedience to God's requests through Our Lady, therefore doesn't execute divine will. Now here, the Church has officially recognized the Fatima apparitions, because the miracle of the sun was so sensational that it converted even atheists. There were over 70,000 people when in the COVID area the event happened. So in fear of irritating the Soviet Union, Vatican leaders decided not to obey Our Lady's requests. The consecration wasn't performed as the Virgin had requested. They did some consecrations, rather limping. We consecrate the world. We consecrate the nations that are not yet consecrated. But the word Soviet Union, as Our Lady wanted it, that is God, was not done. And in an apparition, it was Jesus himself, who gave the bitter verdict of disobedience. And this happens in August 1931, after more than 2 years, from the apparition of Our Lady, where she asks for the consecration. Apparition, as we have seen to Lucia. Lucia receives the following message from Jesus. Make known to my ministers, given that they follow the example of the King of France, in delaying the execution of my requests, that they will follow him in misfortune. But it will never be too late, says the Lord, to have recourse to Jesus and Mary. The disobedience continued. Despite even this message, from Jesus to the seer, they haven't wanted to listen to my request. So Jesus appears to her again and tells her, they haven't wanted to listen to my request, like the King of France already cited. In the previous apparition, they will regret it, and will do it, but it will be too late. Russia will have already spread its errors in the world, causing wars and persecutions against the Church. The Holy Father will have to suffer much. Now when Jesus cites the King of France, he refers to a previous fact. That is, given that they follow the example of the King of France in delaying the execution of my requests, they will follow him in misfortune. He refers to the disobedience and punishment of the King of France, who will be guillotined, as on June 17, 1689, appeared to Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and had communicated to her to tell King Louis XIV, the Sun King, to consecrate France to his Sacred Heart. The disobedience lasted until Louis XVI. The Capuchin monarchy ended with the bloody French Revolution and persecutions against the Church and the Pope. For over 100 years, therefore, the kings of France didn't obey divine will, delaying the consecration. And Louis XVI, in 1793, was executed at the guillotine. The king made the consecration while he was in jail. Hey, too easy. By now you've lost everything. It was too late. The time of grace was finished. A legitimate question that also came to Lucia. In a letter to Father Gonçalves of May 1836, Lucia reports a conversation that happened shortly before with Jesus on the theme of consecration of Russia. Interiorly, Lucia writes in this letter, "I spoke to the Lord on the subject, and a little while ago, I asked him why. He didn't convert Russia himself directly," she says, "but why? Do you put the request to men? You know they won't obey you, do it yourself." So without the Pope making the consecration, and Jesus answers her, "Because I want all my church to recognize this consecration as a triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and thus extend its cult and place beside devotion to my divine heart, the devotion to that Immaculate Heart, that is, Jesus wants an action. Not so much because he wants it so. That is, he wants to understand if humanity repents. If not, why should I give grace? If these continue to be corrupt, criminals making wars, injustices, etc., who should I save? I want a clear sign." What is it? I want a clear sign. Fabio has arrived. I want a clear sign that I am listened to. That is, that human beings, and especially the hierarchy, that boasts of being my representative, obeys me. If not, why should I have it done? It's like with children, right? Stop stealing Nutella. Yes, Mom. And then continues to steal it. Well, I won't buy it anymore. And of course. So, this sign of repentance isn't given, and human beings don't obey divinity, who has the power to remedy human affairs, because God, Christ are omnipotent. But man prefers to do things his own way, gathering the bitter fruits of his own disobedience. Lucia replies, "But oh my God, the Holy Father won't believe me if you yourself will not move him with a special inspiration." And Jesus answers, "The Holy Father, pray much for the Holy Father. He will do it, but it will be late." Nevertheless, the Immaculate Heart of Mary will save Russia because it is entrusted to her. So Russia is protected by Our Lady, because Our Lady had Armenian origins. Indeed, her city was Ephesus, Turkey, which, at the time, was in those areas there. So in this dialogue between Lucia and Jesus, the concept of humility and obedience is again exalted to receive grace and change karma. That is karma, we don't change it with creeds, with bowing and scraping. We change it with practical actions. Because what creates our physical reality are actions, not thoughts. Thought becomes important if it creates action. If not, it creates nothing. Therefore, not having the Pope fulfilled the Virgin's requests, Russia is not consecrated, and the prophesied sign manifests itself that arrives, that announces the arrival of war as punishment for the world's sins. Cause-effect. If we sow hatred, selfishness, division, gossip, mistrust, what can we reap? We will reap social war, first, military, minus after. And the leaders who take power are the executors of those laws that then strike the people. If not, honest people come to power. Now we here in Italy have two glaring cases of people who betrayed us. First, the 5 stars who promised us mountains and seas. There was no mountain and there was no sea, only great shovelfuls of crap. Now this lady here, the same, she promised us mountains and seas, and she's selling us out worse than those others. A few days ago they gave Tim away to the Americans. Now they're selling other strategic assets. She plays kitten with that brain-dead Biden. Biden who finally Don't think that Trump is the solution, because there's a faction of counter-information, of people a bit excited, who think Trump will be the miracle. No. You've seen that both Trump and Elon Musk welcomed the genocidal Netanyahu. They are two power domes that are clashing, but both antichrist. Because to reach those levels, you must be corrupt. So Trump is an exponent, just as Archbishop Vigano is, minus of the losing power dome. The winning power dome. At this moment, the one that dominates is the Jesuit one, compared to the clerical dome, that of the old DC, etc., etc. But they aren't good. Vigano was at court at the palace when there was Marcinkus and Pope Wojtyla who trafficked with the mafia, with which they financed Solidarnosc. And so he's not a little saint. He speaks now to the people's gut, trying to use the people against the dome that crushes them. But he's not one of ours, he's always one of the system. Instead, how beautiful Vigano's speeches. They're like those of Beppe Grillo. They're like those of the Lady Prime Minister before they went to power. Then they go to power and the miracle happens. Worse than Saint Gennaro. They become the opposite. It's a betrayal. The real question we must ask ourselves, but we the people, is there anyone? Because we're the ones being taken for a ride. Have you seen her little scene at the petrol station? The excise duties are here together. Excise duties. It burns. Well then. Sign. January 25th, 1938. The sky of all Europe was illuminated in an exceptional way. There was a magnificent aurora borealis, extraordinary event for southern Europe. And in Italy it was even seen as far as Naples. The sky was tinged with a very intense red, as we have seen in the previous photos from last year, as if a huge fire had developed. Wide beams of light crossed through it with colors similar to those of the rainbow, so powerful as to illuminate the night. The press talked about it for several days. For the Seer Lucia, it was the sign foretold by the Madonna. And the following year, something happens, that the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, where Joseph Stalin makes an agreement with Hitler to divide Poland. This is why the Polish hate the Russians. It's not that the Russians are poor little saints. The Donbass. There are karmic roots for which today we are back in the same situation. So, Stalin, here you see him with Nazi hierarchs, signs a pact of partition of Poland. It was that which has triggered World War II, Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, or Hitler-Stalin Pact. But these two criminals, it's not that, were friends. Both of them had in mind to stab the ally. It was a strategic pact, and Stalin had planned to attack Germany. But he miscalculates because he thought the French would have engaged the Nazis more. Instead, Hitler wins much earlier and tricks his opponent. That is, it's Hitler who attacks Russia, taking it by surprise because Stalin wasn't ready yet. So the 35 million Russian deaths, or Soviet if we want, have a root in these atrocities. It's not that it happened by chance, the Russian people. Sure, the Russian people pay. But the leaders of the Russian people are criminals. They were criminals. Therefore, the geopolitical consequences of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact were crucial for the beginning of World War II. See? All happy, beautiful, friends. We are friends. Friends. There are cartoons from that time, where Hitler and Stalin walk arm in arm, with one hand behind their back, and one has a gun, the other has a dagger. It was already clear that it was something that wouldn't last, at least to journalists, to the more astute political analysts of the time. So this agreement provided the acquisition of territories according to their respective expansion objectives. The Soviet Union secured the annexation of eastern Poland, the Baltic states, and Bessarabia. This is why the Baltic states hate the Russians. It's not by chance. They were invaded by the Russians. Bessarabia, which is a region that included parts of Romania, Ukraine, and Moldova, all hate the Russians. Romania, Ukraine, and Moldova. So karma is recursive. Gaza, terrible, frightening. Palestinians, but who are the Palestinians? The Philistines. What was the situation a few thousand years ago? The Philistines persecuted the Jews. Karma turns. Now the Philistines are under the Jews. But nobody stops this feud that continues through the centuries of centuries. I mean, someone has to stop it. So we have the feuds of families like the bandit pests and all the unfortunately tragic stories of our Sardinia. But we have geopolitical feuds that over millennia, feuds of people, and nobody stops. When it's time to command, no. And they do the same things. Only that God sent Samson to free the Jews. Today the Jews, from those lessons, have learned nothing, if only because they were persecuted by the Nazis themselves during the Holocaust. So karma is recursive. Haven't you understood? Sin no more, or worse will happen to you. Haven't you understood it with a little pat? Next round, kick in the teeth. You don't understand it with the kick in the teeth, I'll cut off your head. You don't understand it like this? I'll crush your body. Sooner or later you'll understand this story because God doesn't tolerate well the destruction of His creation. He didn't create us to kill each other like dogs. He created us to be brothers. We are children of the same Father. Islam and Christianity are children of Abraham, Isaac and Ishmael, one son of the servant, one son of Sarah, but brothers. First Ishmael is born from the slave, from the servant, then Isaac is born, because Adonai manifests himself to Isaac and tells him, "Your wife Sarah will bear a son." She was in the tent, because at that time, a woman counted less than a pig. And they couldn't participate in meetings, much less in divine meetings. And God manifests himself physically because he gives him, Abraham, food to eat. He gives him the kid to eat, makes him bake bread, makes him wash his feet. It's written in the Bible. But we don't know the Bible. And the wife laughs. Since God has such big ears, worse than Dumbo, he says, "Why? Does your wife laugh? Does she doubt?" And instead, she gives birth to Isaac. But between the two sons, envy is generated, and so from there the problem starts. From Isaac comes Christianity, Judaism and Christianity. From Ishmael comes Islam. Who has seen Muhammad? The Archangel Gabriel. Jibril is the Archangel Gabriel. So the two religions have the same Father and the same divinities. Allah, who is He? He is Adonai. Unfortunately, we don't know these things. Therefore, Stalin wanted to re-establish the old borders of the Tsarist Empire, which Russia lost after World War I, while Germany wanted to annex the western part of Poland. 8 days later, World War II began. This is an emblematic, very famous photo, which shows the Germans throwing down the barrier at the Polish border. September 1st, 1939, and the Soviet ones on September 17th of the same year. So these were the consequences of the pact between communists and Nazis, who had decided to divide the territory of Poland. So with the Germans entering Poland, World War II begins. So the historical fallout of this whole situation, which involved Russia, Ukraine, Poland in 2022, and NATO countries, has roots there. because we didn't understand anything there, and now it presents itself worse. Because today's weapons are much more terrible than those of 1939 and 40. So Russia's mistakes are still reverberating in the world because the law of cause and effect has not been mitigated or changed by the law of grace, because then the Vatican disobeys. The Church, which was supposed to be the diplomatic apex that brings union among peoples, isn't even doing it now. Indeed, Vatican diplomacy, which was once very powerful, has completely disappeared. So obstinate disobedience and perseverance in evil, of the powerful and of the peoples. Therefore, the evening of August 23, 39, when was signed the nefarious Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, there was a new aurora borealis, to emphasize that was the moment that triggered the terrible condition that then led to, I believe, about 60 million deaths during World War II. But 60 million deaths with atomic weapons today are trifles. Just last year here in Cagliari, I gave a conference where I explained what a nuclear war is, which is not just the moment of missile explosions, it's everything that happens afterward, with nuclear winter that will extinguish life on the entire planet Earth. Christ says, it will be worse than in the days of the flood. So the prophecy of Fatima is fulfilled. Even Hitler himself was witness. Albert Speer, who is this gentleman here, who was Hitler's architect, in his memoirs of the Third Reich, Erinnerungen, in the original, remembers having witnessed with Hitler the extraordinary celestial phenomenon while they were at the Berghof, which was the summer mountain residence of Hitler. Hitler, you know, he was very, how do you say, superstitious, and was passionate about esotericism, something I extensively talked about in that seminar, Nazis and Soviets in the Conquest of the Hollow Earth, where I explain actually that the origin of Nazism starts even before World War I and was all based on esotericism, including the swastika, which is an Oriental spiritual symbol and is a solar symbol that Hitler, compared to what had been proposed to him, modifies. So, Hitler and his hierarchs were esoterically prepared to understand certain things. Hitler's mountain residence was right in front of a peak that Hitler thought had an enormous power, central from the spiritual point of view. In his book, Speer says, that night we met with Hitler. This is the refuge and this is the Untersberg, on the terrace of the Berghof, to admire a rare celestial phenomenon. For about an hour, an intense aurora borealis illuminated with red light the legendary Untersberg that stood before us, while the vault of heaven was a palette of all the colors of the rainbow. The spectacle produced in our minds a deep unease. Suddenly, turning to one of his military advisors, Hitler said, "It makes one think of much blood. This time, we won't be able to avoid using force, and he will use it." There is also another testimony which is from this Nazi hierarch, Nikolaus von Below, who was also present that evening together with Speer, and reports the same story in his memoir book, Als Hitler's Adjutant, as Hitler's adjutant. Von Below wrote, "At first we thought it was a big fire in one of the cities north of the Untersberg, but then that red light illuminated the entire sky to the north. Then it was clear that it was an unusually intense manifestation of northern lights, a natural phenomenon that rarely occurs in southern Germany." Von Below said to Hitler that perhaps that was the omen of an imminent bloody war. And Hitler replied, "If it must be so, then let it be as quick as possible." Then in reality, it wasn't quick at all. I mean, so many deaths, 5 years. So the connection of these exceptional auroral phenomena with solar activity was already evident in 1938. The newspaper Stampa Sera of January 28 and 29, 38 headlined, "Our Sun is in Turmoil." In the article, you see, it states, "The Sun is going through a period of great, very great activity, rather rare and extraordinary. Therefore, as extraterrestrial science says, as last year's crop circles have announced to us, the Sun is the causal center, not only of the phenomenon of life in all planets, but also of human events that are somehow manifested or directed according to God's plans. And God, obviously, who is also the creator of the physical world, uses nature too, to give signs, something that now we have completely lost. The Nuragic civilization instead knew these things very, very well. So nature had made itself at the time an instrument of divine will to announce its justice. Do these recent auroras borealis bring us to the same announcement? The crop circles, with repeated solar symbols, tell us that the time of purification, of the fulfillment of prophecies, is near. That is, the recursivity of karmic law is reproposing exactly the situation with the same protagonists of the time, for a situation that will be much, much more dangerous. This time we are in the final phase, because we have nuclear weapons. Article from yesterday. The Sun shows no sign. No from yesterday. July 23rd, NASA warns that a new solar storm is coming. It could create a radio blackout worldwide. The explosion was frightening. Fortunately, it happened on the other face of the Sun, but the proton flux that will hit Earth will still be very, very powerful. I remember that the explanation of all the crop circle symbols, of which I have already decoded the meaning, you can find in this seminar. So we are in the final phase of prophetic fulfillment. So the battle of Armageddon, the great battle, where good will definitively triumph over evil, is at its epilogue. Message received from Giorgio Bongiovanni, July 22, 2014, the year of the events of Maidan Square, and the massacre at the trade union's house in Odessa, where begins the final process that leads to the invasion by Russia of Ukraine. The war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, in Syria, and the various bloody crises that strike many countries of the world, of the Middle East, of Eastern Europe, of Africa, finally of Asia, are the prologue to World War III that the powers of the West want to unleash against Russia and China. In a previous communication received by our writing brother, the celestial monarch said, "I will upset the minds of the powerful, setting one against the other, their perverse spirits, because there does not exist on earth a power of good, capable of prevailing. So God divides the power of evil into two factions and hurls them one against the others, so that between two quarrelers the third enjoys, and the third are the elect, who will be saved by extraterrestrial aviation, widely foreseen in the scriptures." This process is underway. Because, do you remember Putin who was fooling around with Berlusconi? He came to Sardinia, even. Berlusconi completely rebuilt the Olbia airport because his powerful friend was arriving, with all the little women that... What's the name of Berlusconi's villa? Villa Certosa. Putin was sitting at the Antichrist's table. He was part of the elite. At a certain point, the Antichrist said, "Dear Vladimir, we need the enormous resources of Russia to feed our well-being." Putin says, "But, and the Russian people? Well, who cares about the people? Peoples are sacrificed. Ah, I won't do it. What do you mean you won't? No. Russia is not for sale. I'm sorry. He got up and left. And he will make that very important speech at the conference on international security in Munich in 2007, where he says, enough with this new world order with a unipolar center that governs the world. They were left stunned. What do you mean enough? Ah, aren't you one of us? No. From that moment God takes his head, removes him, because he is the king of Rosh, of the prophecy of Gog and Magog, which is in the Old Testament, the prince of Rosh, who is the Antichrist, chosen by God, and whom he hurls against the Antichrist, beloved by humanity. Not so much him as a person, but the values that he carries forward: sex, success, career, individualism, division, suspicion, etc., etc. He's a bit younger than me, the Antichrist. He is incarnated. 2,000 years ago, his name was Judas Iscariot, the son of perdition. He is the head of finance, of Anglo-Saxon high finance. That is, what once was world high finance, today no longer, because Russia and China have created a parallel system that is winning. So he won't give up the kingdom. Rather, he destroys it. But God has other plans. Meanwhile, he makes him do his service. This process, says the message, is underway, and the Antichrist, master of the world, is in serious difficulty. 2014. Think today how he's doing, because he knows that his days are numbered as the God of armies is coming through his Son, the Messiah Jesus Christ. He, that is Jesus, will be accompanied by those famous 12 legions of angels of which Christ tells Peter, when he admonishes him because he cut with the sword in the Garden of Gethsemane, Malchus's ear, with whom he will descend from heaven with power and glory. Prepare yourselves all. The good and the just rejoice, because the day and hour are near. The Third World War will begin, but will be interrupted by the great sign that will make the powerful weep and smile with joy. The servants of God's servants, peace, from heaven to earth. Message of July 22, 2014. Another important message that links back to the prophecy of Fatima, because Pope Pius XI had a vision. He sees Satan, who asks Christ for 100 years of power. He says, he challenges him, if you give me 100 years of power, I will destroy the church. And Christ says, all right, let's see if you're capable, and gives him 100 years of power. Why was this necessary? Why does Christ grant Satan 100 years of power? And the start date of his power is October 13th, 1917, day of the last apparition of Fatima. It was important, this, because the times had to be shortened. The scripture says, if those days were not shortened, not even the elect would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, thanks to the elect, those days will be shortened. So there is an intervention from the spiritual world and from the extraterrestrial cosmic world, who leave some flying saucers here and there, from which all modern technology is born, including atomic weapons. Because times had to be accelerated, so 100 years of power to Satan had to accelerate the processes of humanity's selection. And in relation to our choices, either of salvation or of self-destruction, because with modern technologies, the destruction of the ecosystem is much faster, as we have a consumerist, capitalist system that consumes goods to accumulate currency. So the 100 years of power, starting from 1917, month of October, ended in 2017. Message From Heaven to Earth, Fatima, 1917-2017. The 100-Year War of Satan against Christ. The time of the Antichrist is about to expire, and so behold, the dragon vomits all the poison left in his breast, before being beheaded by the Archangel of Justice. The year 2017 of your time closes the 100-year war that Satan has unleashed against the Most Holy Mother of Christ, and against her Son, the only begotten of the Father. From the end of that year, the evil one will begin day by day to lose his power in the world. Message of 2016, it's happening. So the message is truthful. It announced a certain fact, because the BRICS, Russia and China are now prevalent even at the level of military technology and weapons production power. Russia, China and Iran have, and even the Yemenis, the Houthis have hypersonics. We Westerners don't have hypersonics. Hypersonic missiles. It had never happened. But when the beast is mortally wounded, it tries everything to win, even at the cost of destroying the territory and the conquered souls. For this reason, the beast that comes from the sea, that is the United States of America, and the one that comes from the land, that is Russia, both servants of Satan, reference Revelation chapter 13, want to destroy the world and men with a nuclear war. But in truth, we aliens, children of light, tell you that they will be prevented from implementing such a bloody and diabolical project. The justice of God through us will intervene with all the divine power that characterizes it, so that what can be saved will be saved. The just, the good, and above all the elect should not fear. For love of them and only for love, the universal monarch will manifest himself with power and glory. The 100-year war will be won by the Lamb and the Most Holy Mother Mary, sacred earth and sacred temple of men of good will. Why sacred earth? Because just as Christ is the spirit of the sun, Mary was the incarnation of Gaia, the spirit of earth. Because the astronomical entities that contain the enzymes, humanity, are divine entities that assume an astronomical body, but can manifest themselves physically in the forms and appearance of the pyramidal enzyme, that is, of the humanity that lives in that world. A Solar Genius, October 10, 2016. And so this process that begins in 2014, from 1917 amplifies, and on February 24, 2022, Russia invades Ukraine and begins the war, which is the last war of the Antichrist, who will lose. But for humanity, it will be a terrible tragedy. Because the number of elect, that is, the people who truly repent, is small. Few millions. In terms of purchasing power parity indicator, the BRICS countries have already surpassed the group of 7, that is the G7. The BRICS grouping, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, represents 35.6% of global GDP. Instead, the G7 countries 30.3%. Data from March 2024. Then it happened. A few weeks ago, another clamorous event. Saudi Arabia decided not to renew its agreement of 50 years on the petrodollar with the United States. Expired Sunday, June 9, 2024. According to what reported by the media, the agreement allowed the sale of Saudi oil only in US dollars, because Saudi Arabia has joined BRICS. Gigantic problem. The supremacy of the American dollar is based on oil, because oil could only be bought in dollars. What did this mean? First, the United States had free oil, they just had to print green bills and they would buy it. Then they sold paper to the whole world and thus money gold is born. Paper gold represented by the dollar. Therefore, for 50 years America has sucked resources from all over the world, allowing itself a lifestyle superior by 6 times to that of Europe. Only this way could America afford that frightening army it has. No longer being able to play that game with the petrodollar and having Russia, China, and other countries hoarded huge quantities of gold. They have in their project to create again a currency with gold collateral. This means the complete ruin of the United States of America. Will they allow it? Obviously not. Rather, they destroy everything. These are the real reasons why the conflict will not stop. So Saudi Arabia can now use other currencies like the Chinese renminbi, that is the yuan, the euro, or local currencies. This situation is known by everyone, including our Prime Minister. The only one who had the courage to say things clearly was the President of Serbia, Vučić. 3 or 4 months remain before catastrophe. Article of June 21st. Vučić was interviewed by the Swiss weekly Weltwoche. Yes, Weltwoche. We will not participate in the conflict. The major newspapers completely ignored the words of Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić, who said, "In today's Europe, everyone acts like great heroes, but they haven't told their peoples that they will pay a very high price." Among other things, we made a terrible impression. In fact, Crosetto offended Stoltenberg. Meloni was despised by that nasty person who is von der Leyen. We made really ridiculous figures. I mean, worse than this, only blood in the streets is missing. The peoples will pay a very high price, Vučić said, reiterating that things are getting worse day by day. So much that we have 3 or 4 months left, maybe less, before catastrophe. And there's even the risk it might happen before then. A few days ago, again, always Vučić, interviewed by a Serbian TV Pink, said, "Of the Europeans, Americans, and British, they are already preparing for a conflict with the Russian Federation, and they are preparing much faster than some would like to see. Did you know they are readjusting the road system of Europe to let military vehicles, tanks, and so on pass through? Italy, too. They are preparing much faster than some would like to see in every sense. We know from military preparations, we know how things are going. And I want to tell you that they are preparing for a military conflict," Vučić declared to the Serbian television channel Pink. Something that was, by the way, confirmed by the new commander of the British Army. Article from Republica of July 24th, so a few days ago. The new chief of the British Army. Let's prepare for a war, for a possible world war by 2027. In his first public speech, Rolly Walker launched the alarm for global stability in case of Chinese attack on Taiwan, and asked for the acquisition of smarter munitions. That munitions, you know, are very smart. They are so smart that they kill everyone, children, elderly, dogs, and cats. Obviously, this is a deception because actually it's the Westerners who foment war. Since the Russians, the Chinese, the Arab world are winning, but they're not interested in war because the West is collapsing. It's the West that wants war. So there is a deception. Why? Because they are. It's Taiwan that is provoking China, because Taiwan has the Anglo-Americans behind it, not vice versa. Therefore, the world is in chaos. There is no sign of improvement. In fact, everything is getting irreparably worse. Another armed faction is the mass media. People are completely unaware in the vast majority of what is happening, so ruin will fall upon us. Suddenly, from evening to morning, our life, surreal, pretending that everything is fine, that there is a future that doesn't exist. Our life will be blown up by events, dramatic and frightening. Thank God. Thank God. There is a third wheel. The disclosure confirms the truth of extraterrestrial presence on our planet. In 2017, the article came out in the New York Times, which revealed the existence of ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, that is, Advanced Program for Identifying Aerospace Threats, which are the extraterrestrials. A UFO research program led by this gentleman here, who looks a bit like a crude Roman, all tattooed. Luis Elizondo, CIA man. Not only the Pentagon reveals this, but also military-sourced footage is released. That is, UFO footage recorded by pilots of military fighters, of the Navy, that demonstrate the presence of an aviation not of this world. Military testimony is even authorized. So here Tucker Carlson, for example, on Fox News interviews, former pilot in command David Fravor, on December 20th, 2017, who is one of the authors of those videos. And Fravor says, UFOs exist and they are not of this world. Very important intelligence men like Christopher Mellon. He was also head of Senate intelligence, so men of the system. Interviewed again by Fox News on May 29, 2019. Then, in my conferences, I also played the audio. But here, I'd like to do just a quick overview. UFOs exist. It's a confirmed reality. He even says, but UFOs exist. It's no longer an issue. What do you mean it's no longer an issue? Until yesterday, you denied everything. In fact, whoever believed in UFOs was crazy. And now suddenly, Mellon says, UFOs are a confirmed reality. Then, another incredible thing happens. Another intelligence man. Moreover, of intelligence of the one who wage information warfare. David Grush, June 5, 2023. An article is published on the Debrief website with the revelations of David Grush. 36-year-old young man, former official of the UAP task force, that is, UFOs, in which he denounces this. The United States possesses extraterrestrial vessels, partially or totally intact, the bodies of extraterrestrial pilots, and has reverse engineering programs on recovered alien devices. That is all modern technology, largely derives from the study of these spaceships. Not only that, but through a federal law signed by Joe Biden, public hearings are called at the American Congress and David Fravor, David Grush and Ryan Graves, he too a former Navy pilot, July 26th last year, public hearing at the United States House of Representatives. At the meeting titled, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Implications on National Security, Public Safety and Government Transparency. UFOs are a threat, that is, they confirm everything. They are there. It's technology not of this world. They are extraterrestrial. It seemed to me like watching a science fiction movie. Listening to these words in such a high and authoritative and institutional venue. It had never happened until President Biden, in the law funding American armed forces, on December 22, 2023, officially confirms the existence of UFOs. Again, this had already been confirmed in a law the year before, and of non-human intelligences. This is a screenshot of the PDF file that I downloaded from the United States government website. Do you see? unidentified aerial phenomena, technologies of unknown origin and non-human intelligence, or equivalent subjects, maybe under another name. So, a federal law of the American government, the one that more than all others, has opposed the truth of extraterrestrial visitation. Suddenly, it confirms it and makes it a law, even prohibiting secret funding to study recovered extraterrestrial technologies. So, they drove us nuts, the skeptics. But the military, governments deny. They are phenomena, swamp gas, or drunk people, now all quiet. There was even that curly-haired guy from PSYCAP, who with a really brazen face, praiseworthy, said that maybe the American pilots these pilots who are super trained, had mistaken an airliner for a UFO. But if America has pilots like that, they can't even win a war against Callery's soccer team. Just to deny and not admit that they've been talking nonsense for years. They are here. PSYCAP doesn't want scientific evidence. PSYCAP is an institute put there and created specifically to deny everything, regardless of scientific evidence. They boast of being scientific, but they are not, and they're only blah, 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 blah babble to deceive the people. This is the truth, Samuele. Piero Angela was the greatest obscurantist. Piero Angela came to Paoli Arbore to take away, together with the Carabinieri, a skeleton of the giants. And he enjoyed it, like those who have the telepaths enjoy compared to those who don't have it. On August 15th with the huge lines, he enjoyed knowing the truth and denying it to us. This is the truth, Samuele. So, we must be logical. Who was talking to me about logic? Someone. You. Okay. So, if the system itself tells the truth, extraterrestrial is the most terrible nemesis for the system. But what will they invest to hide it? Everything. If that is my worst enemy, because I cannot control it, and it's very powerful because it has technologies. I was in the office of a commander of a Russian atomic base in the 90s, and he invited us, because at the time we were doing a collaboration with a Russian program like Voyager. So the Soviet Union had just fallen. He saw the program and called us to the base. He says, "We often have UFOs above the launch silos. We shot at them with our anti-aircraft guns," the commander told us, "but whether we fired confetti or candies at them, it was the same. So, we are scared by the presence of vehicles that we can't understand what they are, and that, manifestly, have technology enormously superior to ours." And we said to him, "But, did you ask?" Of course I asked. I asked the general staff. And what did they answer? "You don't have the security clearance levels where we keep these documents. The only thing we can tell you is don't shoot at them. It's useless anyway." And the commander tells us, he says, "But I am responsible for this base, which was anyway a large city. There were thousands of military personnel. About 2 hours by car from Moscow, they took us there by military truck." And he says, "So, we want information. We've seen that you understand something about this. Can you explain it to the base's military personnel and their families?" "Of course, Commander." Wow. And we gave a conference to the military personnel and the families of the base. Since communism had recently fallen, soldiers would come with uniforms still from the Red Army. It was truly a surreal experience. So we have direct testimonies of this reality, not chatter, from obscurantist swindlers like Piero Angela or PSYCAP, who dress themselves in a chrism of scientific belief, which is absolutely a mockery, just as Beppe Grillo was, just as this government faction is now, because whoever enters those rooms Either you get corrupted or you blow up, you end up like Falcone and Borsellino, like Mattei, like Aldo Moro, and so on. You enter there to obey. There is no government. Moreover, we are a nation defeated in war, so we pay dearly for our follies. Let's come to a great witness, Juanito Juan. Let's see if he answers me. I heard him before the conference, and I said, Juanito, if you're available, a greeting to the Cagliari public. But I'll show you two of his UFOs. I was in November. In Valle Hermoso, state of Tamaulipas. This is the photo. That made him famous. It was a triad of photos of a flying saucer right in front of his house. He really makes many of them. I'll show you some. This beautiful one. The UFO with 3 metallic spheres. And he sends me the originals, so we analyze them, etc., etc. They are absolutely real. Now let's hope he answers me. Let's make a video call. Here it is. Can you give me a microphone? Yes. No. Let's do the video.
Hi.
Hi, Juan. I'm here with your spaceships. Look, Juan. I'm putting the camera towards the audience that wants to see you. They love you, Juan.
Greetings to everyone.
They are grateful.
I got emotional about what is happening. Many thanks. A cordial greeting to everyone, to all your audience that is there with you. A warm greeting from Mexico to Italy. A greeting from the heart. A greeting. I love you all very much.
He says he loves you. Thank you, Juan, for your dear greetings. I'll call you in the next few days so we can talk about other things, okay?
Many thanks, Pierre. A cordial greeting, and
Here we are.
I hope to come there soon.
Here we are viewing your fantastic photos, and I'm explaining to the people present here your extraordinary experience.
Many thanks, Pierre.
A hug, Juan. Take care.
A hug. See you soon. See you soon.
See you soon, Juan. Bye. Take care. Great Juanito, a very simple person. He works as a car body repairer in this small town in the state of Tamaulipas, very dangerous area. In fact, when we went there, he drove us in his car because sometimes there are shootouts between the narcos. The town, however, has 60,000 inhabitants and is near the American border, so it's an area of illicit trafficking. And I went there to meet him in person, because the material he is producing is really exceptional, extraordinary. I did an interview with him that, unfortunately, with difficulty, we are translating and readapting into Italian. He speaks a Spanish, very colloquial, so it's not even easy to keep up with him, do the translations, but he's really a simple person. He sends us the material for free, obviously. He lives off his work, by the way. Oh, yeah. Come on, 2 more. By the way, despite being a person of modest means, and he does charity work. In fact, Juanito Juan, his name is Juan Manuel Sanchez. Juanito Juan is a name given to him by a poor sick person who called him like that, Juanito Juan, help me please. So he goes by this nickname, if we can use this term, Juanito Juan. The case is of worldwide significance because he is effectively the new Billy Meyer. These are really exceptional shots. He also makes videos. This is a photo that So 3 days that we were in Valle Hermoso, it rained continuously. We hoped to see something, but evidently the extraterrestrials didn't want us to be disturbed, in quotation marks, by their presence, and this is a photo that he took the next day. We left on the 14th, sorry. With a leaden sky, it was raining. The next day, bright sun, and flying saucer above his house. This is the chimney of his home, where he also has his workshop. And it's a UFO that's already part of ufology history, you see? Similar UFO was photographed in Passaic in New Jersey on January 1st of '52. Now I don't remember George something. Milan in Italy on February 16th of '62 by Gaspare de Lama. And Juan Manuel Sanchez, Juanito Juan, on November 15th last year. But he really makes, I struggle to keep up with him because it's continuous. Look how beautiful these are. 5 flying spheres, always in the street. This is the cemetery of Valle Hermoso. This is his repair shop. Truly extraordinary photos, analyzed. Not long ago, he perceived some presences. He got up. And look, there was the area in front of his room that was illuminated by this very intense blue light that didn't have a specific source. Then he understood that there were extraterrestrials. By the way, have you seen the spheres inside the house to Puedo Tocar? Now I hope, after summer, to manage to bring him to Italy, so we could touch Juanito Juan. Juanito went outside, and there were 3 spheres of light near the telephone pole, or the light one, I don't know, do you see? That then united and formed a single light on June 20th, 2024. And, very recent, a beautiful photo of a triangular craft, July 23rd, so really, 4 days ago. You see? At first he thought it was the American experimental aircraft, TR-3B. But it's not the TR-3B, which has a hole in the center. What? No, it didn't have lights. It's an extraterrestrial triangular craft where there are both humans and extraterrestrials, but these objects are also present in theaters of war. This flying sphere was filmed by a Hamas terrorist with his body cam on October 7th, 2023, while they were attacking the kibbutz of Sufa. So there was this terrorist who had on his helmet a body cam and was filming the scene of the massacre. Can you give me audio, guys?
وقف غاد هات قوفته وحش بيحن وحش سنديلك روح ارمي روح هادي عليا انزل
You see the sphere?
انزل سيبني وقف وقف غاد هات قوفته وحش بيحن وحش سنديلك روح ارمي روح هادي عليا انزل روح انزل سيبني وقف
So these objects monitor the world scenario on February 28th on Frontier Conflicts X channel. The footage was published of a cigar-shaped UFO sighted in Ukraine in the Donetsk area by the 406th Ukrainian Artillery Brigade. This is the screenshot of Frontier Conflict. The Ukrainian soldier who filmed the UFO says bigger than the Empire State Building, which is a famous skyscraper in New York. In the war zone of Donetsk, he tells DailyMail.com that it was deadly still, even though there was a strong wind, and it was hotter than anything he had ever seen because it was a thermal camera mounted on a drone. The news was also picked up in Italy, you see from Repubblica, UFO, account of sightings of a mysterious object from a drone in a war zone in Ukraine. A screenshot more, with the larger object, here it is. The footage was taken by a military drone in infrared mode that was performing reconnaissance above one of the conflict zones with Russia. The images show on the horizon a huge cigar-shaped object, completely static at low altitude. It was estimated to be 400 meters in length. This is the drone on which the thermal camera is mounted, which is this one here. It's a DJI Mavic 3 thermal. And here we have a Ukrainian soldier, just to understand the dimensions, holding one in his hands. This is the video. You can listen to the dialogues.
Охренеть, ни хрена. Что это за херня такая? Да тарелка. Ну, блядь. По-любому. А ну приблизь еще. На месте стоит, ты бачишь? А на месте, блядь. А в теплах ничего не светит? А что такое?
Should we hit it? Well, extraterrestrial message. Severe warning to the powerful of the world and its inhabitants. We want to remind you again that we are present, visible, and operating in war zones, especially in regions where atomic missiles and nuclear bases reside, Ukraine, Russia, etc. I am Adonisis, who in this sad time of yours lives and operates on earth and in heaven, with the Interstellar Confederation, which he presides over. Now, this whole situation, as I was saying at the beginning, referring to these beings, they have a project, and they have explained it. Planet Earth. So, an incontestable reality. Think, message of February 16th, 1968, by the way, day of my 9th birthday. An incontestable reality. Still, it was unthinkable that the American government would even make a law confirming the presence of intelligences not of this world on our planet. Planet Earth is under the constant control of superior creatures coming from evolved worlds of sidereal spaces. I interviewed President Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, Laura Eisenhower, a few years ago, and she confirmed to me that her great-grandfather had meetings with the extraterrestrials. By the way, she told me that the secret services harass their family, the Eisenhower family, because they don't want them to talk about it. It is happening. Even if the responsible class of men who govern humanity on this planet, wants at all costs to ignore. That is a precise methodical study plan to remove from man the dominion and royalty over the species placed under the protection of his intelligence and his, I add unfortunately, insane industriousness. The plan that these superior intelligences are about to implement and develop provides for the global solution of all negative aspects that have been troubling for a long time. The organizational and evolutionary balance of the human species and other subordinate subspecies. It is in the plans of these cosmic intelligences the necessary resizing of an unspecified number of souls. Resizing, that is repentance, that is changing their basic concepts and, consequently, their lifestyle, from egoistic competitive to altruistic collaborative. We Sardinians are not very collaborative. 100 heads, 100 ways of thinking. The new humanity must be altruistic, collaborative, not egoistic, competitive. The good of all, above anything else. Because only in the good of all, our good is guaranteed and stable. As long as there is inequality, there will be war. As long as there is inequality, there will first be the Philistine who persecutes the Jew, then the Jew who persecutes the Philistine, first the Roman who conquers the world, then the Roman, the Italian, who gets crushed by other powers. We must get out of this feud that soaks the soil of this world with blood. Can you imagine how many liters of blood have soaked the soil of this planet, human blood, for the killing of brother against brother? It's a monstrous thing. We kill each other. It's frightening. We're not civilized. We're a bunch of criminals. At best, complicit, because we do nothing. Yet we see the terrible scenes today on TV, but we do nothing, because it's not at our home. It always happens to others. Wrong. It will happen to us again. Law of cause and effect. Then free will. Everyone does what they want. But in the universe there is no neutrality. There is personal responsibility in front of the laws. You don't escape it. You don't get away with it. You have dominated. You will be dominated. You have killed. You will be killed. You have hated. You will be hated. You have loved. You will be loved. You have helped. You will be helped. The law is simple. But we can't make it our own. So the Italian people deceived, taken for a ride by one of the most corrupt political classes in our history, doesn't react, minds its own business, defends its corner of comfort. This corner of comfort will be blown up in a violent and unstoppable way by the law of cause and effect. I don't know what will be the life choice of who listens to these words. It's not my problem. Freedom is sacred. But remember these words. Because I have already said things that today are sad reality, and these things will happen. I have been seeing for 35 years what the extraterrestrials have predicted happen. Unfortunately, the number of those who have awakened, have united, and have worked in favor of the cause of common good are just a handful, barely surviving in the cold. In order to provoke, therefore, the resizing of an unspecified number of souls, listen, I don't want to pontificate. I do this with love. I left the state railways. I left the world of television. To do this, speak to the people, because there aren't many who have the courage to tell the truth. Without deception, without lies, the pure and simple truth, in complete freedom. Each of our choices cannot be implemented unless it is the fruit of a great love and a great passion. If I hadn't been driven by this, I wouldn't have left the state railways. I was going from the beach of Golfo Aranti to the beach of Poeto. From the beach of Poeto, I was going to the beach of the Gulf of Oristano. In Sardinia, with the salary I got as a railway worker, you live like a lord. I tell you an anecdote. There was a colleague, I started work. I got a job at the Olbia department where there was a Neapolitan colleague. And he tells me, he says, you know, I, like all Neapolitans from Milan, since he worked there, wanted to go down to Naples. But there's a queue that reaches Mount Etna. And they told me at the department, you'll maybe get there the day before retirement. However, if you really want to leave Milan, because he didn't like it there, you know, Milan, the smog, the fog, the cold, the Milanese. Sorry, I say this without... He says, we have choices. Well, what are the choices? One. How one? Yes. And where is it? Sardinia, Olbia. No, Sardinia. But in Sardinia, there's no civilization. Maybe they don't even have radio. I did military service at 18 in Viterbo, and there was a fellow soldier from Verona who was stunned, amazed, because I knew Genesis and Pink Floyd. He says, but do you have radio in Sardinia? Yes, we have radio, and TV too. He says, I would have never thought because I thought of Sardinia, shepherds, sheep, and women with mustaches. No, we have beautiful women, I assure you. And he says, but in Milan, this Neapolitan colleague says, I didn't want to stay. And he says, and well, waiting for better times, send me to the Asanara prison. Hey brother, but this is a piece of cake. Here is wonderful. So you're not going to Naples? What Naples? What Naples? I'm a king here. I go to the beach. I go fishing. Sardinian trains go at 90, 100 km per hour. I mean, meanwhile, you can cook an egg and pasta. He says, I'm not moving from here anymore. I found paradise on earth in Sardinia. Here's an anecdote. I wouldn't have left the railways if there hadn't been that meeting with these beings and everything that came after. Besides then, I would have never imagined, with that choice, to be then projected onto an international scene and become a researcher, win awards as a documentarian, go to the United States, to Russia, really, a life that I believe it only because I lived it. Because these beings are very, very capable people, so they make you do 10 turns, but tough ones. So today, I know with personal, factual data, the things that I tell you because they exist. Just look for them, ask, and it shall be given to you, knock, and it shall be opened unto you, seek, and you shall find. It's a law, because the universe is programmed to give science and consciousness to creatures. It's made for that purpose. The law serves for that, to make us achieve, willing or unwilling, happiness. Because God is Father, and is also Mother. Because is androgynous, in fact, it is said, of Christ, he is the only begotten, that is born from the one, because God creates from itself, as it possesses the energetic attributes of the masculine and the feminine in perfect balance. In order, we were saying, to create relative stability, that is, relative to this dimension, of universal values, and to eliminate as much as possible the hypertrophic action of excess, material world, and of defect, I add, spiritual world, science of matter, excess, science of spirit, defect. In the emotionality of current values achieved on operating psychophysical planes in the dualistic aspect of life, that is good, evil. Now, the time has come for the trial of total failure of human work on this world, and in truth, the trial has begun, and its unfolding already preludes to a severe judgment that should not be ignored by anyone. The events that follow with increasing gravity. I repeat, 1968, we hadn't even gone to the moon yet. clearly demonstrate the serious accusation that hangs over all humankind, guilty of not having known how to realize in the light of justice and universal love the plan of creative intelligence in progressive evolution, free and peaceful of all living souls. The debate between good that accuses and evil that reacts is coming to an end. The time of calls and warnings ended long ago. Now there is the reckoning and the definitive condemnation of evil. The procedures for building this sentence of condemnation and salvation are in the minds of angel men, who, today more than ever, operate and live on earth and among men. No one knows who they are, how they came, and what power they possess. In truth, it is in them the power to punish and console, to destroy, and to build. Message received from my spiritual father, February 16, 1968. I repeat, completion of my 9th birthday. And who would have ever said it? Message of 2007. Situn, Shainar, and Ithakar, from the spaceship Pax, communicate. We have a salvation program that concerns the physical survival of humankind, and also its spiritual salvation. Several million people on your planet are followed and protected by us. We call them called or awakened souls. In case of a nuclear war, these souls would be taken by us and brought to safe places, such as in Jupiter's 2 satellites, Io and Europa, that can host life for some weeks or months. This already science has discovered that, especially on Europa, there's life that is, it's inhabited. It's a planetoid completely iced over. But scientists have identified artificial structures. There was a Russian scientist we interviewed in the 90s. He's called, I believe he's still alive, Boris Rodionov. And he played a trick on his colleagues. He would bring photos of Europa's surface and show them to experts of structures, for example, of oil transport, so large, pipelines, pipes, etc., and they would say, what do you see in this photo? Hey, I see pipes, I see bridges, I see stations. Interesting, but this strange color? In what part of the world is it? No, it's not the world, it's Jupiter's satellite Europa. But how is it Europa? Then we interviewed him, Rodionov, among other things. What Rodionov said was brought to Italy not only by us, but also by dear Giulietto Chiesa, who became interested also in this theme. For then after we would have purified your world, bring them back to earth to begin in peace, love and brotherhood and justice, a new course of evolution, paradise, Eden, new kingdom, etc. This program that we call Since Time Immemorial Saras, which is a palindrome name, that is, it reads in both directions, which means the planet of error repetition. That is, we don't learn from our errors. Wars have never given lasting peace. We continue to make wars. Violence has never given stability to empires. Empires fall, and we continue to build empires. In short, we don't learn from our errors. Very serious. So, it is in the hands and in the solar mind of Adonai, who is Christ's Father, and of his Son Christ indeed. On them we depend, and to them we devoutly entrust ourselves. We want moreover to add, to be clear and not be misunderstood, that the elect and the called are for us all those beings, children, men and women who, independently of their political, religious, and scientific creed, work for humanity's good, disinterestedly. For children in particular, we make no exception whatsoever, whether they are children of good beings or whether they are children of bad beings. For us, children always and in general are pure and innocent beings. by antonomasia. Finally, to conclude all that we have explained synthetically, totally includes the fulfillment of the prophecy promised by the Messiah Jesus Christ and by John the Apostle in Revelation. The return, God's judgment, the tectonic movement of nature's forces, air, water, earth and fire, which are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, Jesus' descent from heaven with heavenly Jerusalem, the salvation of the elect, the defeat of Antichrist, the establishment of God's kingdom also on earth, and finally also massive contact with us and with our spaceships. This we have been ordered to announce to you from our cosmic masters, and this we have told you, with the hope that your good sense doesn't make you forget the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and that the God, good Lord, is infinite love, but also universal and cosmic. Justice. Peace. They recommend serenity and faith for the just and blessed on mission on earth. Your brothers of light, Seton, Shinar, and Ithakar from Spaceship Pax, through Giorgio Bongiovanni stigmatized, and they are nothing else than explanations in modern key, for example, of St. Paul's words in his letter to the Thessalonians. Then we living ones who have remained will be caught up, that is taken together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air. Thus we will always be with the Lord. Or, chapter 24 of Matthew's Gospel. Here it is Christ who speaks Jesus Christ. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. And then all the tribes of earth will beat their breasts, and they will see the Son of Man, coming on heaven's clouds with great power and glory. He will send his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one extreme to the other, of the heavens. So the prophecy is being fulfilled. The announcement is given. They say in Naples, who has given, who has had. Let's make our choice, thanks.
Grazie.
We have 35 minutes for questions. Please. So, yes, then, I ask for your generosity to give us, if you want, obviously, a contribution for the expenses that we have incurred for the hall and everything else, because such an efficient and beautiful venue has quite some costs, so I thank you already now if you'll want to give us a hand. So microphone Dennis.
Thanks. I'm Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Pierre. There's a question that lately I ask myself very often. I ask you. And I don't hide that I fear the answer.
Go ahead. I'll be good.
Let's hope I'm talking about Sardinia, about our land.
Yes.
To define ours.
It's the land that gave us life, so we inhabit it.
I don't feel worthy to define it ours in this sense. Our land, and I wonder.
But it doesn't belong to us.
I wonder. This land where we had the grace to be born and to live. How much we Sardinian people have managed to defend it, guard it. Yes, defend it in every way, because we are for millennia that we are being exploited and colonized in every way. Here, what have we done?
We, Sardinians, are still under the heel of God's wrath.
Wait, let me finish. I want to ask you this. What do you think is the karmic retribution?
I was telling you,
I know you were telling me.
as a Sardinian who lives the visceral love of this umbilical cord that will never manage to cut. I, for example, physically arrived in June. I'm in pieces because my body needs this sun, this food, this energy that only Sardinia has. I've traveled the world, so I say it with knowledge of cause, because we have about 7,000 truncated cone pyramids that pull down an incredible energy that keeps you standing. They're like two invisible hands that pull you up. So I must come to Sardinia at all costs, at least once a year, to recharge batteries, to pass to the second phase of battle. Sardinia is still under the heel, for millennia, of our very serious errors, which were the Nuragic civilization, that of the giants of whom we are descendants, who came from the stars, rebelled against God's laws. They were very skilled, traveled the world, and became dominators, slavers. God destroyed that civilization with a cataclysm. The Nuragi have fallen, those that have fallen all from the same side. Theros, which is gigantic, what they've brought out is nothing. The whole area up to where they found the Monte Brahma giants has been inspected apart with ground-penetrating radar. There's everything underneath. So, this civilization was swept away with violence and fury by God's law, that uses especially the elements of nature for its rebellion. So still we are in error because we can't unite. I was perhaps the only one, because when I met Eugenio Siragusa, I knew that in Sardinia there were people who followed him. They were all divided. They wouldn't even greet each other if they met in the street, people who knew these messages. I said, but how but you have learned of these messages and you've quarreled, you've divided, and so at the time I was a railway worker, Laura, I began to travel Sardinia far and wide, picking up everyone. Today, some are here to reunite them. And so I managed to create a group of 40 people with enormous effort, because to get them to work wasn't easy. To have snacks, they were always all present.
Very easy.
Very easy. And so we traveled Sardinia having snacks right and left. And we did little. It's not that at the time I was still at the beginning, so I didn't have great capabilities. I had this force, overwhelming, that pushed me to try to unite, because they seemed values to me. Among other things, Dad tried in every way to make a cooperative, but said with Sardinians it's impossible. That is, we are not collaborative. I don't know if still here there is Nicola. Are you here, Nicola? No, he's gone. He told me this joke. A Sardinian finds Aladdin's lamp, rubs it, the genie comes out. Ah, I will fulfill one wish of yours, but to your neighbor I'll give double. What do you want? Take out one of my eyes. That is, take out one of my eyes. So to the neighbor he takes out both. Then I met, this was an expressed desire that Eugenio told me. I met Giorgio Bongiovanni, who is younger than me by a few years. He's from 63 and I'm from 59. Eugenio told me you must go to the March region to meet the Bongiovanni brothers. The thing didn't really excite me much. I wanted to meet Eugenio, but he says no. First you must meet these characters. Obviously, I didn't imagine that then Bongiovanni would have started having apparitions of Our Lady until receiving the stigmata. And so, when a friend of mine enters such a grandiose experience, I said to myself, when will I get another chance? To be able to stay close to a sign. Historically so important, Father Pio. Saint Francis, so, what do? I go to the March region. I don't want to be a spectator watching from afar. I want to be there, close to that energy, that force. And so I asked for transfer to the Marche region. 4 years, I believe, passed. With the group we continued. And we met. When the railways gave me the transfer, I said, guys, I'm moving to the Marche region. Who wants to follow me? Free choice. And so we moved a group of Sardinians. We went to the Marche region, but once I left, the group disintegrated again. And since then, despite I come every year, we can't reconstitute a group that enters this concept. Not a group to be beautiful, I am the boss commander. A group that enters into a structure, organized, that collectively pursues with other groups. That type of logic. Instead here it's, hey no, but there's so-and-so, and then there's this one, and then there's Biglino, that is, they make a minestrone of presumed experts. It's not like that. As I was explaining to Samuele before, governments invest loads of money to manipulate truth. So it's full of people who deceive and lie, and almost none who tells the truth because it's uncomfortable. Sorry, no, obviously I don't want to put you as...
Shall I pass the microphone?
Yes.
I pass the microphone.
No. I don't want to be controversial, obviously, Samuele. So since then, we don't manage to, because we Sardinians have this worm. Rather than see our neighbors good, we prefer to be unwell ourselves. We are lazy. For me, going from Sant'Elpidio to Milan, 4 hours by car, Oristano, Cagliari, you have to plan it 3 years before. Oh, my goodness, it's far. Already from Baratili to Nuragic. Well, I must see. And we are like this. And so, we have a gigantic problem. That is, we don't grow culturally. We don't move except extraordinary cases like Linda Corius, who jumps like a cricket from right to left. She's an exception. I am an exception. I continuously travel the planet I've been. To Tamaulipas, there in Valle Hermoso, then Spain, then Poland. I travel the continent. I come to Sardinia. That is, the world in the end is small. The possibility of having experience is grandiose. Staying enclosed. There. You remain like a piece of cork. Rigid, and you don't transform. You don't evolve. You don't grow. Now, there are some brave souls who are trying again to build a group. They meet in Oristano if there's anyone who's interested. Joelle, where is she? Here they are. She's not Sardinian. And another guy will come, who is a dear friend called Marco, who is from Emilia. And perhaps 2 non-Sardinians will manage to do the miracle of uniting the Sardinians. I don't know. I make the sign of the cross, hoping that our Lord Jesus Christ illuminates the granitic head of my fellow countrymen. Please, forward with questions. Thank you, Laura. The karma is heavy. I've been various times to Pali Arbore, and I feel unwell there, because still the place where there was the capital of the giants. Pali Arbore, the marsh of the King's Water, there was the giants' capital there. If you go there, there's UFO traffic every night because, probably since the giants came from the stars. This, the elders of the area still say it. Then, they rebelled against God and were punished. But the heaviness of the energy of wrath that unleashed, the extinction almost total of that race, is still there. And I who perceive it because I have a certain sensitivity, I feel unwell. Yes. The big wave. Exactly, yes. Please question who has the microphone.
Hi, Pia.
Wait.
First of all, you're very funny.
Thanks.
You made me laugh.
I do a bit of cabaret to lighten up because the themes are quite heavy.
Okay. So I premised that at the age of 12, I've always been fascinated by ufology.
Hold the microphone closer to your mouth.
So when they talked about science nonsense, I talked about UFOs, so they would throw me out. Same for religion. I talked about UFOs, and they would throw me out.
One day I told Mom, I've decided to do a conference in Baratili. Oh my goodness. No, all these UFOs, no.
So then in 2016,
Too bad my sister has gone, who was sitting here in front.
Then in 2016, an extraordinary thing happens because I had a beautiful experience with these beings in a semini. 8 years have passed. Indeed. They made me meet you, and also Giorgio Bongiovanni. So I'm very happy.
Thank you.
My question is this.
Can you remind me your name?
Barbara. I am Barbara. So my question is this. Also because then, I really felt perceived that this thing had to happen to me. I wanted to know the reason why after we see them. These beings shoot this ray at you? I don't understand. Because anyway, there was this very strong ray.
Any experience that we have, if it's true, obviously with extraterrestrials, it's a seed that they plant to give you a direct experience because they evaluate that in the heart of people who have this experience there is a seed that potentially can germinate and dedicate itself to this cause, not in small talk, in beautiful words and facts. That is, enter it fully, invest even money, because anything, eh? You see, there was a planet called Yarga, and the Yargans contacted the president of a board of directors of a large multinational Belgian car company. That is, he was Belgian, but the multinational then. And they told him that they had our same problems. In the end, they gathered. They had contact with superior civilizations and created groups that today we call arcs. But the name isn't important, just that they are groups that operate. What did these groups do? They gave themselves a ceiling of economic well-being and said, how much do we want to live with? 10,000 euros per month is fine. Everything that exceeds this figure, instead of putting it in the bank, we invest it to spread this knowledge. In the end, they conquered the planet. Because since they were very serious, they began to attract the high strata of society, economists, scientists, etc., and in the end, the arcs became the planet. Here it won't happen. But the project remains the same, so the project must have union, seriousness, responsibility, professionalism. It mustn't be an exalted crazy, the UFO fanatic, or worse, New Age, the energies like that, which are important, but we must be practical, because evil is very practical. They have banks, weapons, they have everything in hand, religions, politics. What do we have in hand? Flies. Because, unfortunately, good, on planet Earth, when it manifests and encounters these themes, fanaticism, exaltation, laziness, quarrels, friendship case teaches, but also our case. And we can't manage to unite and be serious in a project of renewal of society that starts from you. How can you renew others if you don't renew yourself? That's why politicians will always fail, because they are the old man. From the old man, the new cannot come, the old will come.
Also these days, for example, I happen to see them. I see them.
So they are stimuli that these beings give, hoping that coming to know someone of their, how can we say, programmed ones. This union is created, and this seriousness, to a beautiful project of transformation of human society. Will we succeed? It's not only a problem of Sardinia, Laura, I assure you.
So I also had an abduction. So it's absolutely not true that aliens are bad.
Of course it's not true. However,
the problem is that they don't believe. People don't believe.
The problem is that even those who believe in the end do nothing. They abandon themselves anyway to common life while continuing to love these values, but they do nothing. They don't unite.
Perhaps because we have difficulty finding people like us who give so much unconditional love, and we really want an arc to be created here. But unfortunately, it's difficult to find people.
However, we must set the example, because in words we're all good. We must set the example that is put our hands in, put our time in, put our money in, put commitment in, overcome ourselves, turn the other cheek, forgive 70 times 7.
Sure, that too.
Big problems.
Thanks, Pierre.
Another question thanks to you. Oh, Leonard, where do you pop up from? From under a granite boulder?
So I renew my thanks to you, Pierre.
Thank you.
So you said alien intelligences indeed will take away those who have got their hands dirty and who works for life. You recommended several books to us and advised us to study these books. I, as a parent, ask you, what can we do instead for our children? If there exists...
Protect them from this society that wants to ruin them.
If there exists some... Wait, let me finish. Some documentary, I don't know, some texts, some cartoons, specifically dedicated to them, because obviously, the books you propose...
If you get in touch with the people who want to create a group again here in Sardinia, I'll put you in touch not with a cartoon, but with people who have done homeschooling. People who do things, not just talk.
Okay, thanks.
To protect children from all the filth that the elite wants to set up. Gender and all these obscenities here, which are attempts to normalize pedophilia. Because they are pedophiles. They are pedophiles, ritualists, Luciferians. That is, they sacrifice children's energy to get power from Lucifer. All of them. All factions. They are all like this. Well, the Epstein case, they were all there, many Italians too, inside. Famous names, etc. Please. So, where are you, Joel? There they are. Talk to them afterwards. Who has the microphone?
Good evening.
Where are you?
I'm here.
There she is.
I'm hidden. My name is Cinzia. I was listening to the conference, and I was intrigued by something that, in my opinion, is very important instead. Before you said that you could tell us about thought image, and therefore about this communication system that they can use to get in touch with us, which is completely, let's say so, harmless, because who has no thoughts? Who has no images? And so maybe it's also important to know how to recognize these images.
Yes, so.
Thanks.
Thought image is not something that is comparable to any form that our brain produces. Thought image is what was in some way shown in the film Contact. No Contact. The one where there are the heptapods that make those spots. What's it called? Ah, the arrival. Arrival. The arrival. Thought image, I try to explain it to you because it's complicated. It's not complicated. So, thought image is a cocoon, where inside there's the image. The envelope that wraps the image is the explanation of the image. When you receive thought image, you receive the image and the complete explanation that underlies it. That maybe, to explain it all linearly, can take even hours or days. It's their way of communicating. It cannot be interfered with, while instead telepathy can be interfered with by entities, either disincarnated or worse still, demonic. So it's not a safe medium. True communication with the programmed ones is through thought images. They are instantaneous. You, in an instant, take in an entire project. It happened to me that I was given with a thought image a project, the explanation of how to do it, why it was needed, all the strategies and the time of Realization of this project was 10 years. And it all went just as they had transmitted to me. So they communicate in this way. Not always. Sometimes a person. Sometimes another has a dream that concerns me, or I have a particular dream that isn't the classic oniric elaboration of our lived experience. Because there are parameters that then they make sure that you learn to distinguish. They teach you to distinguish energies. For example, there was a period where I entered various times into the world of the dead, of the disincarnated, where I saw relatives, people I cared about, deceased for a long time. That is, they teach you to distinguish. Before they give you the mission then, at a certain point, they tell you, from today, when your level of professionalization has reached what is needed, they give you the mission. They say, from today, you do this. My preparation lasted 20 years, imagine that. They made me travel the world, meet people who taught me the craft of documentary maker, of journalist. I was friends with Juanito Juan, anyway. An absurd world that is possible only thanks to these beings.
Sorry, Pierre, also with numbers. That is, with number sequences? Has it happened?
Numbers please the Antichrist very much, the Kabbalah. So they don't...
They don't use sequences.
No. Frequencies are in thought image.
No, excuse me, sequences.
Frequencies are inside thought image.
No, sequences. Number sequences.
No.
It's not possible.
Number sequences, we find them in their symbolic messages, which are crop circles. Because all this stuff here is easily manipulable by Satan. The Antichrist is passionate about Kabbalah. The elite, when they make their massacres, their attacks, always use the number, the Kabbalah. For example, September 11th is the date of the Twin Towers, but also the date when Salvador Allende was killed. Because 11 is the number of change. 11 is also the symbol of the two Masonic columns, because then Freemasonries, high Freemasonries are everywhere. So, no. That is all stuff that is true, that exists, but since Satan has no free will, he uses not having free will, he has no creativity. So he takes what is positive and turns it upside down. Indeed, Freemasonry, which once was the channel of positive spiritual initiation, then becomes the channel of Luciferian spiritual initiation. But the five-pointed star, which is the symbol of Christ's 5 wounds or of enlightened man, they turn it upside down. The Kabbalah, they use it because number is important in the creation. God creates with number, but it's a type of power that those ones use. Please. Who is it? You must have the microphone to... So, the lady has been asking for a while. Come here, Leonard. No, her.
No, it's me. Good evening, Giorgio. My name is Marina.
Marina.
I come from Rome, and I am a visually impaired person.
Yes.
I follow you already for some time on social media, and so, out of curiosity, I came...
But you came from Rome on purpose?
Yes, from Rome I come here on purpose for you.
Thank you. We have Naples, too. The mainlanders move. We Sardinians are... We have cork oak roots. Oh my goodness, it's far.
So, one thing I've never understood...
Yes.
...is karma. So...
Let's be karmic.
I bring you my personal example.
Yes?
So, I am born, and at 7 years old I have a very strong myopia. And at the age of 20 years I begin to have a retinopathy. After that I went from retinopathy to keratoconus, which led me to 2 corneal transplants. What is this? Is it a karma that I have? What is it? What?
Of course.
Does karma mean?
Karma is...
This is something I've never managed to understand.
So, I use a somewhat poetic image. The body is the notebook in which God writes your story, our story. Now, I don't enter into the merit of sin, which concerns vision problems. But it stems, here, if you want, I'll say it in a form. It stems from something that you saw and didn't defend. Or you acted in a way that caused suffering. I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you know Edgar Cayce. To Edgar Cayce comes this lady, who had suffered all her life from a very strong pain in her side. There had been no expert doctor, specialist, healer, nothing. Couldn't solve it. Edgar Cayce, who read Karma, Past Lives, tells her, "You were a Roman noblewoman who loved very much to go to the Colosseum and watch the shows where beasts tore Christians apart. You enjoyed it." And says, in particular, one day, there was this beast that had bitten this Christian in the side, and you laughed heartily. She was reborn 2,000 years later, somatizing the shame of that action of hers. So, you saw you did an omission, that is karma, is aseptic. It brings back to you what you did in good and evil. No, there exists only the real world. That is we. So, everything we have done up to this moment represents a cause that generates karma. Then, Hindus call karma the negative part, dharma the positive part, but in the end the word karma, in Sanskrit, means action. It's the action of the law of cause and effect. When we do an action, if it's ethical, it will give us evolution and well-being, even material. If it's not ethical, it will give us suffering, poverty, weakness, illness, stupidity. That is action, ethical or not, generates reality. This, if you think about it, is an immense power, because if we practice the law, we are able to program our reality, not caring about politicians, banks, because the law is superior to any human force. So you can result victorious in a planet of defeated ones if you apply the law, if you're the only one. The law, since it has the task of teaching spirit, which is eternal, makes you live in the body, because spirit, being divine, is untouchable, cannot be modified, but can be imprisoned in a physical and soul structure that proposes in a real way, or sentimental, the suffering that you inflicted on others. In the worst karmas where, for example, Harry Truman gives the order to drop a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and makes about 300,000 victims immediately, that how many, he will never pay off that karma. So the sanction is the loss of ego sum, its regression into the animal world. And you must reduce 600 million years in the body of a beast, remembering having been human, before having again the right to incarnate in this humanoid structure, which is very powerful, because it has the most dangerous weapon, hands and intelligence with which we can give caresses or build atomic weapons. It depends on us. But power always remains ours because we are children of God. No one can take it from us. At most, Jesus says, they can kill us, but we are eternal. This is why the reincarnation was canceled from the Gospels. But when Nicodemus goes to Jesus at night, he says, "Lord, how is it possible for an old man to return to his mother's womb?" They say, "It's baptism. It's baptism, my foot." He talks about womb, about uterus, an old man who re-enters his mother's uterus. And Jesus tells him, "You must be reborn in water and spirit." What is water? The basis of biology. Our body is 75% liquid water, 99% molecular water. The human body is a purer water than seawater, which is 96% because of dissolved minerals. So water is the matter, the basis of life. Spirit is what incarnates. And then he tells him point blank, it's written in the gospel, you must be born again. Because life is an experience that serves you to learn. If you behave well, you will reap well. If you behave badly, you will reap badly. So if we put ourselves in good, our life will be wonderful. But if we continue with this way here, we will continue to get beaten. This being the planet under embargo, that is cosmically isolated, because here incarnate those who kill, or who are, how do you say it? Co-responsible. It's not the right word. Accomplices of crimes. So if we see crimes and do nothing, it's omitted rescue. It doesn't matter if it's in Gaza or in Ukraine, or in Brazil or wherever you want. We must stand up for ethics and point out evil and do something good. Otherwise, the law considers us responsible. The slothful, Scripture says, God vomits them from his mouth. Who is the slothful? The one who minds his own business, who defends, tooth and nail, even from neighbors or possibly from family, because quarrels over inheritance, I think you all know them. His comfort zone. Greed, having more, envy. This is what we are. And so we are on a planet of karma. This planet is a criminal psychiatric hospital where souls incarnate, spirits with very serious evolutionary problems. That is, they don't realize the law and are obstinate in negative choices. Even that of indifference is a negative choice. You can't stand there and watch. I remember as a boy, young, 19, 20 years old, I discussed with my girlfriends that I read books that talked already in the 80s about environmental destruction. I said, but we must do something. She says, we must do something? Mind your own business. Someone will take care of it. And I said, but if we all say so, nobody takes care of it, and here things go to shambles. And that's what's happening. So we, the people, who are the source of power of the rich, because if we don't buy anything from Amazon, or don't get jabbed, as those ones say, we win. But they keep us divided, and the game is easy, because we all fall for it, and we are not a force for good. We are accomplices. What can I tell you? I anyway speak here. I ask you, kindly, I speak of my experience. I was well off. Dad gave me fruit, rabbit, chicken, pork. You know how much I earned as salary? Today, in comparison, it's more than 3,000 euros per month in Sardinia, and I was a nabob. The extraterrestrials said, leave the railways. No, but leave the railways. But are you sure? Yes. But isn't there a way to fix it? No. But they didn't present me the contract. Act of faith. You asked for contact? Yes. Did we come? Yes. So what do you want? Have faith in us. And I assure you, it wasn't easy. I was shitting myself this much. Indeed. I wavered a bit. But then these beings donated me a life. That when I was in Sardinia, and here there are some very dear friends, that I keep in my heart, and then we see each other sometimes when I come here, in summer. But it was unimaginable that I would be projected, one from Baratili San Pietro, which really is the arsehole of the world. That is even off the routes that go to Puzzu Idu, to Su Palosu. So from Oristano you pass through Nuragic and Riola, but through Baratili you don't pass. That is, we are the marginalized of Oristano province. It was impossible for someone from Baratili to go to America, to go to Russia, to go up there, to go down there, to work in TV. It was impossible, I assure you. Ask who is here, in the hall, that I would have this science, this knowledge, the oratory capability. I never spoke up in a class council because I was shy. They say, but how shy? Yes, I was shy. Now I speak. I speak Spanish. I go to Spain. I go here. I go there. But I was prepared. But you must have faith. Trust. We are here. Have faith. Hey, now it's easy. When they tell me, change. Ah, how beautiful. Now I can't wait for them to change because by now I've understood how the little game works. And they, every 10 years, change my life. And I've understood that 10 years of their standard is one incarnation. So I've already started the fourth life in this life. And you start from nothing. And they always make you reach the apex. And that apex is the base of the next round, always more. So karma, friends, is a very serious thing. That is, we must have the courage to break the trend of respectability, of the comfort zone and risk, because otherwise we will end badly. Because what is unleashing in this planet is frightful. Among other things, I've just realized that a wrong PowerPoint was opened. Because the part was missing. Because according to those messages and that logic, and according to Vucic's words, here it lasts little, but there is a truce that will be given. And the truce will be the unleashing of nature's forces that will generate terrible disasters, to distract the powerful from making nuclear war and to give time to their programmed ones to awaken other souls that are still waiting for the light of truth. If only it were also making the ark in Sardinia. So there will be a truce. That will be unfortunately, great natural disasters. I hope that their messages, that anyway correspond also to Christ's prophecies, manifest themselves. It will be pain and suffering. But better an earthquake than a discharge of atomic bombs that would destroy everything. However, by virtue of the elect who will be saved, Our Lady has asked God again, give me more time for some children that I want to save. And God, who does everything himself, calls the tune, has accepted. So there will still be a time of truce, I don't know how long, but there will be catastrophes. However, you need the microphone. You must have the microphone, otherwise...
Excuse me before asking something because you misunderstood me, and also half the audience misunderstood me. I have crop circles tattooed.
No, Samuele. Look, if...
I tell you nothing else. These are...
Yes, I didn't misunderstand you. Forgive me if you misunderstood me. For heaven's sake...
No, I had a very particular question. In my village, something very particular happens.
Where do you come from?
From Isili.
Isili?
That few in Sardinia know, and that the academic world wants to hide. But I had the privilege, since I speak English, of accompanying an astronomer from London. Now I only remember the surname Lehner, and various American architects from important United States universities around all Sardinia. Perhaps not even Sardinians know it. A friend of mine from my village, inspired by the studies of another person, asked himself one day a question. In our valley, which is called Brabacera, there are several Nuragi.
Yes.
Ours, that of my village in particular, is the one in Sardinia with the tholos, the dome. Highest and best preserved among all 7,000 Nuragi.
Near Isili?
No, at Isili. Right at Isili.
What's the Nuraga called so I can go see it?
The real name is Suidili.
Suiglili.
Idili. But if I pronounce it in Isilian, you won't understand me.
Yes.
Because we have a particular sound of L. Then it took the name of Isparas because that land was given in concession by Isili municipality to the Purist friars, who remained in my village for about 300 years, I believe. Nothing, I repeat. This guy, slightly older than me, asked himself some questions and told me, can you accompany me to do something? And I told him, why not? I need your help. I offered him my help. We went on June 21st, the day of solstice, to a Nuraga, the remains of a Nuraga that we have called Nuraga of Observation Point. On June 21st every year at summer solstice, despite the academy, I can also name names. Blessed soul, Liliu, who has always managed archaeology in Sardinia.
He was the Baron who covered...
The Baron.
Among other things.
Yes. So everyone denies it. And even the tourist guides who manage the cooperative that manages Italy's Nuragic doesn't tell tourists. But if you go on June 21st to the observation Nuragic,
Summer solstice.
at dawn the sun rises behind a Nuragic, completes its arc in the sky, and sets in perfect alignment behind the Nuragic.
Of course.
Biggest in my village. This thing wasn't enough for us. We went around various Nuragi of Sardinia. They all have the entrance oriented to east where the sun rises.
Exactly like in Egypt.
And we measured with various instruments, very important ones, with the help of an astronomer. Also, other Nuragi of Sardinia. They are aligned with the stars.
Yes.
And here I come to the question because, anyway, surely you've heard about the theory of ancient astronauts.
How not? 100%. I did broadcasts with Eric von Däniken.
Exactly. I grew up on Bread and Star Trek. Bread and X-Files? You didn't want to use the word believe, but I was born with the X-Files poster, grew up with I want to believe. I want to believe. But as I respect your work, I repeat, I also respect SkyCap's work.
Of course.
I want to stay on a very rational plane.
For heaven's sake, free will.
And face everything, having the curiosity to learn, because in my opinion, a mind that has no desire to learn and has no curiosity is dead.
Absolutely agree.
So I've read Graham Hancock's books, Robert Bauval's of...
I met them in person.
And I met in person Colin Wilson, who has a whole theory of his particular about demonic possession.
Yes.
He was drunk when I interviewed him, but...
Well, from an Englishman.
We talked, and nothing, in your opinion, the Nuragic civilization, with its mistakes, which you mentioned earlier, could it have had contact with an extra...
No, they came from space.
There you have it.
They came from space. The entire pre-Diluvian ancient world, built according to the constellations. So the Great Pyramids are Orion, but it's all Angkor Wat in, what is it, Korea or Cambodia? I can't remember now. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat is all, indeed, Graham Hancock writes the Mirror of Heaven. So the Nuragic civilization fits perfectly into this context and is almost completely unknown because, unfortunately, Samuele, it's still burdened with karma, very heavy karma.
The ancient Egyptians were terrified of the Hyksos, who were...
Yes, indeed, the guard.
They were none other than the Sardinians.
Indeed, the sardonic laugh, the saying...
They were a seafaring people.
And warriors.
It opened my mind, from this perspective, my accounting law professor, who couldn't care less about law. He studied Sumerian civilization. In class, he only talked about the Nuragi. According to him, the word Nur is a Sumerian word.
Yes.
Which means worship of the sun god. I invite you all to come to Isili, and you'll see it with your own eyes.
Leave me your contact details, Samuele, so...
Yes, at noon on June 21st. Now they've closed it, probably, by the will of the academies, to deny the evidence.
The evidence, of course, but it's like...
At noon, the sun enters through the central hole at the top of the Nurag and goes straight into the sacred well.
Yes, it's like Santa Cristina's well, which is a lunar well.
Exactly, which is near my village.
Thank you, Samuele.
Then, for those who haven't been there, I invite you to go to another giant's tomb where, apparently, it's possible to heal bone fractures.
Yes. Every year I went to Limazani's tomb, where there's such powerful energy that...
And also in the menhirs of Goni and the menhirs of Laconi.
But Sardinia is a gigantic archaeological park. The British have that frigging Stonehenge, and people come from all over the world. We have the universe, and nobody comes. We don't know how to value anything.
Indeed, at a conference here in Cagliari, presented by Jacobo, I told him privately, you go looking for sun alignments in the pyramids, and we have them right here in Sardinia.
It's called karma.
And many Sardinians don't know it.
They don't know it.
Thank you.
All right.
One last thing, Pier Giorgio.
Go on. Quickly, since you've come from Rome.
Well, you talk about Our Lady and Jesus, but not everyone knows, like Buddhists or Jehovah's Witnesses believe.
Behold, I come quickly. Book of Revelation of John. Book of Revelation, John. Jesus says, Behold, I come quickly to pay each one with his wages, according to his deeds. It's written in the book of Revelation. The reward isn't based on religious beliefs, which are deceptions, on real facts. So Buddha is true, Christ is true, but humans, who then make it into a religious discourse, become corrupt. So it's not a problem of the master who comes. It's a problem that the man of this world becomes corrupt. Whether he's a banker, a politician, a prince of the church, a Buddhist, that, in fact, I have a very dear friend who's Buddhist, who was part of a very important and well-known Buddhist association. He left disgusted by the corruption and the handling of money for selfish purposes that was inside, career advancement, disputes. So the problem isn't institutional, it's ours. Earth's humanity is a mess, a complete shambles. We are extremely sensitive to the enticements of evil, and we loathe and run away from everything Christ asks of us for one reason only. It costs sacrifice, sacred duty. We can't repent. We were born in a certain system and we don't change. We can't manage it. Maybe our life falls apart, but we don't change. We don't want to change. And so we'll pay the consequences, which then reverberate forever and ever. That's how the law works. Thank God we're eternal, but the timescales are very long. I prefer to anticipate rather than wait for the gravity and heaviness of God's wrath, which hurts very much, because the Nuragic people are over 6,000 years old. And still we're going round in circles, we Sardinians, except for rare exceptions. All right, friends, I thank you. I really thank you. Samuele, you leave your contact to Joel? If I can manage, I'll come. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.